if it's a candy shell and you're expecting when you crack it open it's going to be chocolate, but what if you crack it open and it's maggots and fucked up shit?
Right.
Like that's it might be like kind of off-putting or what, but it's also like more interesting.
Right, for sure.
That unexpected.
Yeah.
So I love that. That's kind of how most of my pieces started as a science fact, and then like, how can I break it? How can I cut it open? How can I show like what's going on underneath?
For sure. If you but on the side note, if you buy a box of chocolates, listeners, and there's maggots inside, keep your receipt.
Yeah.
You need your money back.
Take a picture though and send it to me.
Yeah.
For reference. Yeah. Good move.
All right, everyone. Welcome to Waiting to Dry. Another classic episode. I'm swinging for the fences on this one. I'm just making that prediction right now.
Where's your sounds?
I don't have like a baseball sound.
What the fuck, Sergio?
Just flying by the seat of my pants on this one. My name's Sergio Lopez.
I'm Josh Lawyer.
And we have
Mr. Black.
Stephen Russell Black.
Nice. Hi guys.
What's that on? What's that from?
Simpsons.
Oh. I thought it might be, was it Reservoir Dogs?
Oh, okay.
That's the only Mr. Black I can think of.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing this, by the way.
Oh yeah, thank you guys.
Absolutely. So you didn't have the longest drive. You've had probably, well, except for local artists, you're pretty close.
45 minutes.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
San Rafael.
How's the weather there? Is it as miserable as it's been here?
No, I mean, it's been okay.
Huh.
It's pretty much the same climate as here, right?
Yeah. Rainy in the morning, and then it kind of clears up in the afternoon.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we'll just jump into it. Yeah. Your work, for those who aren't familiar, is on the lighter side of things. You have drawings that can haunt people's dreams, some might say.
Yes.
But done beautifully.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. One of the amazing things with your work is that you kind of at least when you're drawing, it almost looks like you kind of just go into it.
I do. Yeah.
You don't seem to have much, kind of, I don't know,
like a rough sketch beforehand.
Yeah.
No, so on the drawings, no. On the paintings, yes. Those are super planned out. Because I can't justify spending that much time on something and having it maybe fail.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But on the drawings, I'm totally willing to, if it goes sideways, I'll just throw it out and start again. Because the drawings only take like 3 to 6 hours, so that's not a huge investment of time if they kind of fail, and I'll learn from that. And then the next one goes faster if I have to redo it. But yeah, no, they're super. I just jump in and just do whatever.
That's crazy. So for me, I mean, even in my drawings, I kind of like, if I'm going quick, I'm still kind of blocking in large shapes and then whittling it down from there. You know? I don't even comprehend how your brain works, really.
So there's like the science in good science fiction has to have good science fact.
Right.
So I start with like, and I'm constantly taking photos of friends and people with like my phone and, or finding a picture that catches my eye online.
Right.
I'll download. So I start with something, right? But usually it's just not much. It's like, how the light is on an eyelid or like something. And I start drawing from that science fact. And then what the drawing becomes is the fiction. But it also keeps me engaged. So I don't know if you guys have had this where you're in a sketchbook and you do like 10 thumbnails and you're like, oh, this is the one. And you refine it a little bit more and then you refine to a final drawing and then you transfer that over and do like a finished painting. But by the time you've gotten to that final piece, you've drawn or thought about the piece 3-4 times over and you kind of lost your energy. So by doing the drawings in a way that I'm always engaged or always excited, I don't know what's happening, then I'm excited the whole way through.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
You work on tone paper as well.
I do.
Is that just so you can kind of get the high, low, and middle?
It goes faster that way. You know, like when you're in a graphite piece and you have to build up that value to get to a mid-tone, it saves time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The tone's already there and you're working toward the dark, working toward the light.
Yeah.
Rather than having to build everything up from scratch.
Yeah. I totally understand that. And it's just funner sometimes. You get to cheat and go straight to the highlights sometimes. And just,
for sure.
At least for me, that's my funnest part.
I always use those as that's always the last step.
Yeah.
I always call it the icing on the cake because you like it. You already know you have a good drawing by that point, and you're just kind of like, oh yeah, like,
yeah, exactly. It's like licking. Well, I was gonna say licking your fingers, but I don't know if that analogy works for the icing on the cake ordeal. Yeah, those are cool. So, what's the reason why you kind of lean towards the dark? I had this kind of assumption before going into this interview where I assume that you listen to a certain type of music. I was gonna it's weird because for some reason there is a group of artists that I enjoy who also kind of lean towards the darker sides of topics.
Sure.
And they also seem to have this like love for like a certain genre of music. I don't know if that applies to you at all.
So not around other people. But when I'm working in this, like, there's a certain kind of music which, like industrial metal stuff is like, yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so that makes sense.
Yeah, so it's a lot of Marilyn Manson and stuff from that time.
And is that a big influence in your work?
The trying to pursue a creepy beauty. I feel like those musicians are kind of akin to the same thing. Like they're amazing musicians, but they're just talking about dark subjects.
Right. That's interesting. Yeah, I always wonder the connection between music and us as artists, because I listen to a good amount of music when I'm working. And I don't know how much it influences me. I assume it does, but for me, it's more like to calm me down. Like my ADD, it kind of like slows me down. Like the music you probably listen to would do the complete opposite. I would probably.
Well, it's also not all the time. Like, so that stuff when you're in I like that stuff when I'm in a moment of creation, like when I'm making things up. Definitely when I'm drawing. Definitely in the early stages of a painting, but later in a painting where I'm just kind of like filling, you're just matching tone,
right?
And you're just like picking colors, and you're just like working a little warmer, a little cooler, a little this, a little that. Like in those times, it's all Netflix and like documentaries and shit that I'm like, because that's like the calm, just you're literally icing the cake at that point. You're like, just like putting all the final touches on, the final little blends, the final little details.
Sure.
And so for that, I want to slow down and make sure that I do slow down. Because if I'm listening to that other stuff, it's like definitely way faster. Like toward the end of the thing, like you can just become manic and you're not really not that you're not paying attention, but you're going fast for fast sake, and maybe you're just rendering the shit out of a thing because you're just in that mode of like I
totally
adding all
that.
the stuff, but like it might not be benefiting the piece
for sure. But, yeah, I've definitely had that issue where I have to like stop listening to energetic music because, there's moments where that, at least for me in my process, where that pays off really well, where I can kind of live off of its energy and just go towards like just kind of doing whatever I want.
Sergio, you're listening to stuff while you're...
Yeah, it's mostly podcasts though.
Yeah.
It's probably like 90% podcast, 10% music at this point that I listen to in the studio.
Well, the other thing we benefit from too is like, I don't have time to read books really. Like,
oh, sure.
But I listen to a shit ton of audiobooks.
Yeah.
So anytime someone's like, "Oh, you should read this book," like and I'm like, I don't have to. Like, I just download it on Audible.
For sure.
No,
like, all right, I'll take that knowledge in. Like, that's exactly something that someone's pointed me to.
Yeah. And then you tell everyone you've read the book.
Right. Read in air quotes.
Yeah. They don't need to know.
I've read the book.
I still have all the same information. If we took a test, I could. Book report. I'm ready.
Blind people read with their fingers, right? So I don't see why we can't read with our ears.
Exactly. Yeah.
But that space that I'm creating, where I'm after a dark aesthetic, is not the same kind of music I would listen to if we were like on a road trip or like,
for sure. Are you a big fan of horror film?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I consume a ton of horror stuff.
Can I ask you, what do you think about, I don't know if you've even seen it, but the movie Hereditary, have you seen it?
I love Hereditary.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I've got some weird opinions about it, but for the most part, I think most people like it, so I'm like, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was an amazing film. I was thinking about it. I was thinking about horror film this week just because it seems like they are on this like ridiculous path of just kind of pushing themselves forward as being a credible movie kind of genre in general, using, like, I mean, it wasn't the best movie, but The Silent Place and those movies, they kind of are making it more credible. Hereditary being, like, for me, one of the most amazing films of this last year. At least the one that haunts me constantly.
Yeah. Well, that's a good mark, right? Like,
yeah,
that's something that kind of stays with you.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it goes to the pendulum swings back and forth of their popularity, right? Like, they were huge in the 70s, and they kind of went away, and now, like, they're just having a resurgence of, like, dark stuff coming back.
Yeah, how do you like the new stuff for the most part?
Yeah.
That's great.
I do. There's a ton of stuff. So the ones that I'm not a huge fan of are like torture porn for like.
Sure.
That would be like.
What that is.
Although I love him, like Eli Roth and like Hostel would be a good example of like torture porn. So
Saw and all that. Yeah.
Saw, I like Saw because it's a little more mental.
Oh.
Like I don't think that the horror progresses the plot. So a good example would be like an Eli Roth film where another horror movie in the plot might get to the point where the killer catches the victim, kind of does away with them. He keeps the camera rolling, or keeps like they cut the throat, and then they're showing the guts come out, and they're like the torture porn.
Right.
It doesn't progress the plot, and it doesn't do anything for the story.
Yeah.
That
was one thing I feel like that took me a while to kind of grasp as far as horror films, was the underlining story that they're, even with sci-fi too, you kind of, at least for me, it took me too long to realize, like, at least for myself, too long to realize, they're trying to like talk about things outside of, shooting laser guns or whatever.
Right.
Those things.
Just metaphors for.
Yeah, for whatever. Even like superhero movies and all those things, all kind of, I don't know. I mean, I don't know I don't know if it took me too long, or just, I think horror was the last one to realize, kind of like, there's these ideas. I was listening to Jim Halpert, not John Krasinski, talk about, Quiet Place. And he was like, I was really trying to figure out a movie I wanted to write about a family who's kind of stuck, who feels isolated in a family, who feel like they can't talk to anyone. And when the idea of not being able to talk while you're in a family and having all these things you want to say but not being able to kind of was brought to his attention, he was like, that's exactly what I wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's so interesting that it like was built out of like, that could have easily just been some drama he wrote, but he made it into.
See, I love that's that he took something that like is a simple concept,
right,
and then it turned into what it turned into.
Yeah,
like I have a drawing that I'm in the middle of a painting of that's called Head Turner, and so you can't see the top of her head, and you can just see like her holding her own head, and she's like turning. Like a Rubik's Cube, almost like the pieces. Pieces.
It's like three pieces.
Yeah, three pieces. Yeah. So it's like, I love simple concepts like just the word head turner. Like,
right.
Then if you gave that to 10 different artists, they would interpret it in 10 different ways.
Right. Yeah.
Ideally, and then if their true like kind of emotion about that, just that as those two words.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
that's kind of the misstep a lot of galleries will do with theme shows, is they kind of give you a theme and you're like, you should make it less of what you're, like not make it, I don't know, so specific. Make it something like a Head Turner where you can really put yourself into that idea.
More of an abstract title.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And draw more of the artist out of it. But I don't know. So many galleries nowadays, they want to take advantage of pop culture or whatever it is.
Well, there's also the opposite too, of like where they tell you to do whatever. I'll do whatever. That's the worst one, because like I need something to push against, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
I totally get that too. Have freedom.
Well, that's the worst. I don't know if you guys do commissions at all either, but those are my least favorite commissions is when someone just says like, "Well, I like what you do. Just do something."
Yeah, I don't really do commissions.
Well, then I'm gonna, yeah, it's just
Sergio's probably.
I don't do that many commissions either, actually.
I'm a asshole. So.
you know my favorite commission though is that I have these books now with like that are filled with drawings, and a lot of times someone will say, "Well, you know that out of the second book, like this piece was like my favorite piece,"
right?
And then I'm like, "Oh, well, we'll do a painting of that for you." Like, so that's like my favorite one when people ask for
a painting and you have the drawing.
Yeah, because I always assumed that I did a ton of drawing, like, and I'm pushing into painting, but
right.
I always thought that I would paint, but the drawings took off and were really popular, so I would just kept feeding the machine of like making drawings after drawings after drawings.
For sure.
But what's fun now is people when they want a specific commission of a drawing that I've already done, because it's like, oh, we just paint that one.
Right.
Good.
That's cool. That's a good.
Then there's no back and forth of like, how about this kind of idea or maybe this, and it goes back and forth for a while.
That's awesome. So do you do a ton of commissions?
I don't do a ton of commissions, but when I do accept them, it's the ones that, people already know what I do and are excited to get some creepy stuff.
Nice.
Right on.
Yeah.
Do you ever like turn down commissions then? Like,
I turn down a lot of illustration work.
oh, okay.
Yeah. Because I would love to do some album covers, but the people who have approached me is like, I don't care for the music. So
okay.
Right. Huh. That's interesting. Yeah. I was thinking about album covers today and how influential, at least when I was younger, how influential they were for me to buy or steal or whatever I was doing the album. And I remember a specific artist that I knew of having album covers and me wanting that album just for that reason, and then kind of being let down because the music wasn't my cup of tea.
Yeah.
So I could totally see how, I'm probably the smaller us as artists, and having our artwork is probably the smaller niche of, oh, I know that artist. If someone sees your artwork on someone's album, it's probably a way smaller niche than them just buying the album because they like the musician. But but still, it was for me as an art nerd, it was like, oh yeah, that must be good because I like the artist.
That's hilarious.
I felt like comics were like that when I was a kid. There'd be these amazing painted covers, and you're like, yes, and then you open it up and you're like, oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, at the time I didn't understand that the cover artist is not the same as the interior artist.
Right, a lot of times.
Yeah.
The key would be to do the opposite. Do a shitty cover. Let's start them down low.
You're trying to give very little expectations. And then they open it up and like, oh shit, this is amazing.
Exactly.
Well, if you like this piece of shit, you'll love the inside.
Comic covers are fun. Like I've done a few comic covers.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Would you ever write your own comic, or have you?
I just don't think that there's like a monetary
value to it. Yeah.
I love comics, and if I could ever align the things up where it would pay well, it'd be fun. But so far, just covers are easier and fun when they come up. But.
For sure.
Are they mostly indie publishers?
Yeah. IDW.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means.
Are you a comic guy?
Not really, but I used to know more just because I used to follow illustration more.
Sure.
So yeah, when I was looking into illustration, I wanted to see like, well, what can I possibly paint for that might work for me? And so comic covers was definitely one of those areas that I was more looking into.
Sure. It's odd how I talk with my hands a lot, and then I'm just realizing like that's not going to translate at all. Like, no, but it's odd to me that like when you get a bunch of people in a room like for like a drink and draw or a thing, and like they're very segmented into like the comic kids will kind of stay off to themselves, and like the fine art kids will kind of stay off to themselves, and illustration kind of stays off to themselves, and I love to mix them all up. Yeah, like. Dan Adele, who's like an amazing fine artist, did a couple of covers for Superman, and I was like, "Yes, worlds colliding. This is amazing." Like, I love when
is he the guy who painted like a bunch of like waves and I think
yes,
he's an amazing painter. Yeah,
usually shows at Arcadia.
Yeah,
but he also did some Superman covers, so it's like yes, like I love when high and low culture like that mixes.
Right,
like,
for sure.
Like that's just kind of the standard in Japan. Like like high and low. There's no high and low. Like everything's kind of like just culture and like work.
That's cool.
But
that makes sense.
I like that here.
Yeah, I mean, that is a weird concept in general that we have. I don't know. I mean, it's not just us, but the idea that there's art that's more fancier because I don't know why.
Yeah.
I honestly can't wrap my head around it. But,
Dollar signs.
Yeah. Yeah, but even then, it's like, I don't know.
Well, these days, that line is definitely more blurred than it used to be. Because back in the day, Illustrator, it used to be like fine art was your retirement plan as an illustrator, basically. And so nowadays, it's...
Or to become the art director at a given place.
Yeah, that too.
Like almost like a sports analogy. Like if you were an amazing player, then they'd be like, you would kind of like, oh well, he's an amazing player. But he's also pretty personable. Like we'll give him like a base coach or a coach, or
right?
You know, like those guys like are all used to be players.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like who's it? Mark Chiarello is amazing illustrator, and he was the art director at DC Comics for a long time.
Oh, okay.
Well, that's pretty cool, though. Yeah. I mean, it's always nice when you have a boss who's done the job.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
But that mixing of like different cultures and different kind of art forms, I love that. And I remember when I was a kid, Picasso always said like he just wanted to do everything and like kind of float through everything as long as the style, like as long as it looked like him.
Right.
And that I love. Like I'll do comic covers, I'll do a gallery show, do like commission, as long as you're coming to me for what I do, then get in where you fit in. Like I'll do whatever.
Yeah, exactly. One of the biggest artists is James Jean, and he
I was thinking the same thing.
Does everything.
He does that. Sure.
Yeah, which is awesome.
Yeah.
I don't know if Sergio falls into that category. I'm just kidding. Sergio's just fine ass art.
Fine ass.
Have you done like illustrative work before?
Just a few little freelance jobs here and there, but not much.
I'd have to see it.
Yeah, it's pretty old. I don't think it's great.
So back to horror films. I don't know if you want to talk about this much, but has this been a thing your entire life?
So I was trying to trace back the horror stuff and like when that sort of started, and probably two things is that when I was a little kid I used to ride my bike all the time, and we lived in a little small town, but like maybe half a mile or a mile away was this amazing used bookstore. And so that was kind of the first time I knew about illustration, was going to this I pedaled my bike about a mile out to this used bookstore, and like in the summertime, and I would like kind of just dive through everything and like be flipping through all the stuff, and I found the Stephen King book that Bernie Wrightson had illustrated.
Oh, okay.
The Stand. And that was the first time that I fell in love with like these illustrations are beautiful, but they're also creepy as fuck. Like,
right.
And that kind of hooked me. Like,
right. Yeah, we were just talking about what was the creepy books we were as kids.
Oh, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And then what was the other one? You had one too, right? I forget.
I can't remember.
Oh, okay.
Where the sidewalk ends. Those are not that creepy.
Those are kind of creepy too.
When you're
though.
a kid, though, you're like who's the author
Shel
of those?
Silverstein.
Shel Silverstein. He just kind of had this creepy style.
You mean he himself?
Yeah, and then
he looks kind of creepy.
I know.
He looks creepier than the work is, but
yeah. Did you know he wrote like one of Johnny Cash's songs?
Oh.
That's just a random fun fact about that guy. Another guy that did it all.
Exactly. Yeah.
That Folsom Prison Blues album is like my favorite, one of my all-time favorite
Can't remember what
things. I just rebought it recently because my dad would play it all the time when I was a little kid.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I wanted the actual record. Like, now that we have a record player, like I wanted the actual record, and
cool.
Searched it out. It's fantastic. Yeah.
How much does a record like that go for?
It wasn't expensive.
Really?
It was like $7 at the used like place or whatever.
Oh, really?
I mean, it's not like I searched out like perfect mint, like whatever,
Right.
blah blah blah. Like I just wanted a copy of it.
When I was growing up, my daddy had all his record collection from when he was a kid.
Yeah,
and he was really into like psychedelic music and all that, and the Beatles. And he had two versions of the White Album. One was open and one was still wrapped in its original wrapping.
Oh, nice.
And then he found religion and burnt them all.
Oh no!
And I like looked them up later, and it was like I think like 20,000 or 30,000 for the album.
Yeah.
And I was like, I wonder how much it would cost if you never opened it.
Yeah.
How much that would go for? I don't know.
But the other because you're talking about movies. The other horror thing that got me like young as a kid was I probably watched Silence of the Lambs way earlier than I should have.
Oh, really?
Ever watched it? But we had it on VHS, and I probably watched it like a million times.
Huh. Well, that's a good horror, though.
Yeah.
I mean, it's creepy. It's situational. Yeah. I don't know if it's technically a horror film, but like,
right. I think it probably would be, right?
But it was also beautiful. Like the guy putting the little moth inside the mat, like, like just little bits like that. I just thought they were beautiful. Like, but also I see how other people are like, it's creepy as fuck. But like, yeah. I
mean, that's a pretty good one to see at least. I remember watching Freddy Krueger as a kid and just being horrified. Just I was home alone and shout out to Macaulay Culkin I sat in the dark and was just like, I am so scared right now, just being terrified by that movie. So, I mean, I don't know. Maybe you also watched those movies too young as well, but for me, that was horrific.
How old were you when you first saw The Exorcist?
I don't know.
Pretty young, too?
I was born in 78. I don't know when The Exorcist came out. But...
It was like early 70s, I think.
Okay. So I probably saw it on like TBS or something as a kid.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Probably a little different.
Yeah.
But still, yeah. That was one that I was too scared to see when my older brothers were watching it. Go hide somewhere.
Does horror hold a sacred place compared to other movies? Are they, at least at this point?
No, not necessarily. It's just the two flavors that I like is like pretty and creepy.
Yeah.
Right on.
I like stuff that's beautiful and then stuff that's like, like a little darker.
Yeah, for sure. And that's just been always?
Yeah.
Huh. That's interesting. And so are you interested in like death in general?
I don't know if it's death in general. Although it's a pretty good motivator. Like you're going to die. Like do some cool shit. Like
right.
Because I know someone specifically who is obsessed with death, like not necessarily dying, but more like if she sees a dead animal,
right,
then it's like she has to like stop and look at it for a long time, and it intrigues her a lot, and she finds it beautiful in this interesting way. Yeah, and I can see the beauty in death as well, but it also is like. I'm not so I'm always wondering what the mindset of someone that paints on the darker end of the spectrum, kind of like love, or I don't know what your mindset is towards the dark, what I perceive as dark things in life.
Oh, like real, like dark things?
I suppose, yeah.
Because it's horror movies made up, or like movies are made up, and so you're saying when you come across something that's truly horrific, I think everyone's response is the same, right? Like
like that's horrific. Yeah, I suppose so.
So maybe you're everyone's a little repulsed, like, oh, like that's something's wrong,
right?
And then I guess the people who lean in to like take another look, like, oh, but it's pretty, like,
right?
I guess.
Yeah. Or maybe because you have three names, I'm like, well, obviously, you murder people.
Is that a common killer thing?
I think so.
Oh, like the John Wayne Gacy
thing.
Yeah, or that's assassin thing too, right?
Is it? I don't know.
Like John Wilkes Booth and
probably.
I forget who killed Lincoln.
That was John Wilkes Booth,
JFK.
JFK was what's his name?
I can't remember.
I can't ever remember.
That's why this isn't a history podcast.
I always use the three because they, there's a million Stephen Blacks,
right?
So Stephen Rose, like if you search that, like I pop up, like,
right?
For
exactly.
Sure.
So it's just a branding thing. But when my work first started getting popular, it kind of was odd because my friends felt like they had to like introduce me to other people with all three names. Like, hey John, like here's Stephen Rosenblack. So they felt like they had to use like all three names to like, because that's how I had branded myself. I did it to myself,
for sure.
But it was odd. Like,
yeah, that is a weird thing in general when people learn your name as a full name and they call you that forever.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, and you probably get that a lot.
It's fine. It's a sign of respect too. They're introducing you to someone and they're giving you the full title. Like it's good. I'll take it. That or Mr. Black.
Mr.
Black is good as well.
So have you,
Mr. Black?
I'm surprised you didn't have the Reservoir Dogs, like that dialogue where he's like, Would have to be Mr. Pink.
Oh,
Okay. Your intro was a letdown today, Sergio. I just wanted to point that out.
all right. Well.
Us, the audience, we're all disappointed. We expected more from you.
Jeez, I set my bar too high for myself.
How dare you? How dare you do it so well and then take that from us? But
we all need days off.
But the other say about the creepy stuff. The other thing that I love about the creepy stuff though is it's almost like that chef's thing where like if a chef can make an amazing meal out of offal, right? Then you're like, oh, this is so good. What is it? And you're like, oh, it's intestines and like fucked up.
Right.
Those are things that like a brain or like what like it's like. I kind of think that's cool. Like they made something cool out of like like these bits. So if you paint a beautiful woman, everyone goes, oh well, it's a beautiful painting, right? Right? Like, is it like? I mean, everyone's that's just a common like, oh, it's a pretty girl
for sure.
But if I can paint a severed head and your first reaction is like, oh, it's so beautiful, then then I've won.
Yeah, I get that.
I can see that for sure. There is something about seeing the delivery, like us as artists, the delivery system is something where you can play around with something super dark and be able to kind of explain something very beautiful. Or
I think it's one of the spaces where that's possible. Like one of the only spaces where that's possible. Like
for sure.
They say that comedy can talk about serious things because it's in a lighthearted, like it's delivered, like you're saying, delivery system. It's delivered in a pretty package or like a funny, like oh ha ha ha.
Yeah.
Like so we also are in this space where we can talk about all different kinds of things, and you just go, well, it's just a painting,
right?
But so we can, we have like a lot of leeway that way.
For sure. So
as a filmmakers, if you're talking about movies and you have a severed, you chop the chick's head off and you're like he's messed up, like he.
Right.
But if I have to have a painting of a severed head, then people are like, well, it's a pretty painting, and like they think of other things, and the delivery system is not as like intense as like
For sure, the same image could be what'd you call it, horror porn or whatever,
torture porn.
Sorry, I'm not down with the lingos yet. I'm not hip. But yeah, so for you, is narrative pretty important?
Yeah, for sure.
I noticed that in your work, it seems to be strongly narrative. Is there some repeating kind of storyline or something like that you tend to like lean towards, or is it just the flavor of the week or something like that?
Is there a story I'm telling over and over,
or like something you're kind of trying to convey throughout like your body of work, like an overall narrative? I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, you asked me too fast. I'm going to be scattered on an answer, but I guess like that thing like that trying to show the obscure beauty, so I'm just championing like the stuff that like maybe someone wouldn't look twice at. Or,
there is something about having work, like your workforce is, because it's so dark, it kind of does, at least for me, make me look at it longer, just because I'm like, oh, that's kind of dark.
Yeah.
I don't know. I
also like to set the tone of it being serious. Like,
right.
Because I'm also not a fan of like when there's comedy mixed with horror.
Mm-hmm.
That turns me off right
away.
Is
that a thing? Oh yeah, for the Leprechaun in the hood,
or Chucky does a lot of jokey kind of stuff. Yeah. I'm just like, no, I like to set I want the work to be taken seriously, so I like to set a specific bar of
like a mood or something.
Yeah, and so like also the other thing too is that the creepy stuff will it'll turn people away, but it'll also weed out the crowd. And the people who are left, we have like an amazing conversation with. But the people who are turned off by it, like maybe they were kind of surface, and I wouldn't have enjoyed their company anyway.
Yeah, or they're just not you guys are just into two different types of music.
Yes, sure, sure. But it sets a certain tone, and then the people who kind of stick around or are into it are like
those are your
way
folks.
Into it. Yeah,
I totally get that. That's cool. The God, I was going to ask you something about narrative. I'm sorry, this happens almost every episode.
So the narrative stuff, same way. Like, so if I'm doing a painting, I'm kind of thinking that stuff up ahead of time and planning it out, and I'm trying to like hit those beats and do those things. But a lot of times the drawings, when they're kind of like just more improvised, I'm it's kind of revealing the story to me as I go, or I'm making things up. I always say, like, also I use the reference, like a little kid makes up stories about a shadow in the closet, right? So like awesome. I kind of have like a reference that I start with, but by the time I'm, through with it, it's like totally different from where I started.
That's interesting. That's super cool, actually. I love that analogy. I don't know if I've ever heard anyone put it in such a good way. I've heard a good amount of artists talk about narrative built up that way, kind of like as you're kind of like, taking away clay or marble rather than, I don't know, or some shit like that. You're getting rid of the shit and figuring it out as you go. But yeah, I like the whole, like, the analogy of the kid kind of making, even if you have, like, give a kid a magazine and you have them flip through it, it's kind of that thing where they'll start telling you stories about the people in the magazine or whatever. I like that. That's cool.
I think it's Picasso also what he always said, to have the imagination, like to try to have the imagination of a wise child. So to be worldly, to have skill, to have like things, but then to always kind of think of subjects like the way a kid thinks of subjects. And I think a lot of fables and things that we love and hold on to were created that way. Like they kind of explain things away, like Babe, the Big Blue Ox,
right.
In the story of like they always relate to something real. But the story explains away, like it's the science fiction, right? Of the science fact. So there's like, there's a big gorge or like the Grand Canyon and how did it get made. Like they make up a story to like,
right.
So we've done that. Human beings have done that forever.
For sure. Yeah. There, in your work specifically, there seems to be that, like usually there's a human being aspect and then there's like another almost like monster aspect to your painting, and sometimes in the same person, right? It'll be like almost cut in half, and this half is human, this half is monster. Or I know that there was like a girl coming out of the water or something, and like half her face outside of the water is human, and then underneath it's like a sea creature, or like Lady of the Lagoon or something like that. Is that based off of those kind of historical horror? Kind of like
no, just that idea of beneath the surface something else is going on. I love like cool. If it's a candy shell and you're expecting when you crack it open it's going to be chocolate, but what if you crack it open and it's maggots and fucked up shit? Like that's it might be like kind of off-putting or what, but it's also like more interesting,
right for sure,
that unexpected. So I love that. That's kind of how most of my pieces started, as a science fact, and then like, how can I break it? How can I cut it open? How can I show like what's going on underneath?
For sure. If you but on the side note, if you buy a box of chocolates, listeners, and there's maggots inside, keep your receipt. You need your money back.
Take a picture though and send it to me.
For reference. Good move. Yeah, that's awesome. And so is that kind of talking to human beings in general, like the idea that humans have some darkness in them? Or
I feel like everybody has like all the same things in them, just what expresses like, more than something else is like, because you ever hear and this kind of rings true when you like, like WebMD or like something where you like, you think something's wrong with you and you go look up like a thing and you're like, that's it, I have that. I have that thing. And, like you don't. You don't have but like we kind of see
diabetes and cancer is usually the two things you look up and have.
but you sort of see yourself in all the things, like, and so I don't know, I feel like when we start, we're like, yes, there's inherent, like, you could be a better artist because you have inherently like certain DNA that makes you more sensitive, or
thank you,
or different things. But you also could have been an amazing football player. I don't know, like it's towards whichever direction you kind of like latch onto. But you can also see yourself in if another human being did it, you could probably, it might take you more or less time, but you could probably accomplish the same thing. So you kind of see yourself in everything.
I could see that. So the idea is that we all have what it takes, kind of, but it depends on the amount of attention you're willing to put. Is that what you're trying to say?
Sure.
Towards whatever goal you have or something? Is that what you mean?
I think so.
Okay.
But you're looking for a recurrent theme in the work.
Yeah.
If there's anything that keeps coming up over and over, it's like an idea of what something is supposed to be, and then I want to like pull the rug out from under you and tell you that it's something else underneath,
right?
To keep you guessing about like, well, I think it's this, and everyone kind of has a comment like, oh, I think it's this, and then if I can kind of pull the rug out and do a magic trick of like, oh, it's not what you thought it was, like
for sure,
that's fun.
Yeah.
So do you think of it in that way, like almost like a game that you're playing for yourself?
Yeah, and very very specifically, like I used to draw, like I would do it like when I first started and kind of got attention in a more like in a bigger way. It was I was doing a drawing every day on Instagram, and so I would get up in the morning and I would start a piece which was the science fact, and it would be like a woman's head or like a figure of some sort, half done or a piece of it, and then later in the afternoon is when I'd put in the creepy stuff. Like it would kind of turn into something else. And so it kept people coming back like, what's going to happen? Right. And then, in the evening I would finish and post it for sale. And I would do this every day. And I did it 75 days in a row before I kind of like got burnt out.
Yeah.
But that kind of got, some attention and some stuff. And, so yes, it's very specifically planned out. And I'm odd for an artist because I'm a very left brain thinking, like I have to plan things out and I want to know the numbers and the analytics and the stuff and like breaking it down and why is this working, not working, like kind of stuff. And so even in a drawing, like, putting this area of detail and letting this go and like, why is that exciting or what, I'm constantly like breaking things down.
Well, that's probably pretty useful as an artist because it ends up having a good business. You probably have a better business mind than most artists.
I get as excited about some of that stuff as the art. Like
really
planning out, like I'm going to plan out the show and it's going to be like this, and I'm going to lead them in with these little things, and then there's going to be these bigger pieces, and like, like the analytics of how a show breaks down when someone walks in, where they're going to go to, what's going to be like the more interesting point, how I want them to walk through the show, all that kind of stuff is our tools that you have, right? Especially like the one that people don't take advantage of enough that I think is like a waste are the titles.
Right.
Like it's literally an arrow telling you where to go.
For sure.
And if you're not taking advantage of that,
Yeah. I mean, I've said it plenty of times that the title is so important, and it's our one way of using actual words to let the viewer know what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I think I heard you mention in a podcast about like there not being I always have this thing of that I came up with that you had to express like a similar sentiment, is that when I go to a show, I don't want a fucking Bible next to the piece telling me how great the piece is.
Right.
Either I connect with it and it works, or it doesn't. I don't need the thing telling me like that it's fantastic.
For sure. I don't know if I said that, but if I did, I sound hella cool.
No, but I think you were saying like how I don't remember the specifics, but you were saying that the title was a good leader, but then also like that you
like
didn't
artist bios and things like that
had too much information where you were like, it's kind of bullshit.
Yeah, I feel like it's almost like the show American Idol, where they have to have the tortured soul or the soldier, right? Or they have to have like these built-in narratives to mean that their creation has value.
Yes.
And it's stupid to me. It's like, no, does it have value? And then maybe you can learn about them and it'll add to it.
Sure.
Add to what they're trying to say. But the fact that you need to value art because someone has gone through this thing, it's like, no, that's...
Yeah, the only time I think that it is valid though is in like a museum setting where they're trying to get you to understand a little bit of context.
Right.
So, if I... because understanding the time frame in which it was made, and maybe politically or in that kind of
right. Well, that makes sense. Yeah.
Era, like what they were pushing back against or what they were like, what was happening.
Yeah.
Can kind of inform your idea of what they were saying in that space.
Yeah.
Because that's totally different if they had made the same piece today.
Yeah, I totally agree.
But
that's also museums in that the museums. At least I'm thinking of. They're kind of trying to help you understand art history.
Yeah.
In that world where I'm more talking about, the value of artists that are living and pursuing art as a career today.
Sure.
It's this weird, like, who's got the biggest sob story, raise your hand, or you get to cut in line, which I mean, it's whatever. Like anyone can make a. Like I have this funny thing where I don't watch American Idol, but if you see something where they're like, this guy was homeless, and you're like, for me, my instinct is always like, how long? Or like, what's homeless to him? Yeah, it's it's easy to say you've been homeless. I mean, I don't know. For me, it's like, it's whatever. But it's like, were you living in your car for a week because you drove across the country or some shit
to audition for
that? To audition? Is that you being homeless?
Well, that's one of the things I've always loved about art, though, too, is like I was a poor kid from the middle of nowhere, Midwestern town where I wasn't exposed to things, but necessarily. But if the most amazing thing about art is that no matter what your background is or who you are, what color you are, like what gender you are, what I don't give a shit. Like when we're in a gallery space or when we're like looking at work, are you good or not? Like
exactly. Let your work
only thing that matters.
On its own.
And I've always loved that. Like if the work's good, it's good and it speaks to everyone. If it kind of rises to the top if it's good stuff.
Yeah, and I think for the most part, art does that.
It's an amazing equalizer, right?
Yeah, I just get upset when the other stuff creeps in, or if in those circles where the narrative is of the artist is the most important thing, it annoys the shit out of me. Mostly because those are the places where they sell them
like
big dollar.
Talking about like Damien Hirst or Jeff Koons, that kind of.
Sure, those guys fall into that. I don't even know what their story is. I don't even know if they got a sob story.
No, they're just fantastic at taking money and making more money.
Yeah, yeah, they're very good at business.
Yeah, Jeff Koons comes from like Wall Street, I think. Yeah.
Their art is business,
right?
Yeah,
which it's whatever. I hate it. But
that's another great like equalizer. Why like dark art or horror kind of stuff is not. It's not in that blue chip like society,
right?
Like you're selling to a collector who loves your work because they love your work, and
for sure,
that's more rewarding, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I think the bitching only comes from the struggle of actually being an artist. As us as artists, we're not making tons of money. It's a struggle to kind of live off of your work.
Sure.
So for me, it's just me being a big whiny bitch.
Well, you were thrown into it. Like every artist is thrown into it, and to make everything work is you almost have to be production, but then you also have to be the entrepreneur who is like figuring out how to make money off the work.
For sure.
Right.
And initially, when you first start, it's all about getting good, right? And then once you have something, then you have a product.
Right.
Once you're good, but you're expected to like have learned all the business shit and marketing and promotion, like all of these other things, like to become successful. Whereas you're like, but I was just trying to get good at the painting thing. Like,
yeah, exactly. And I think the other thing is the new modern day model, at least for most artists, is so independent with the social media and the YouTubes and all those things. It's like where you end up having to play a way bigger business role than previous artists, where they kind of would rely more heavily on galleries and kind of just getting their foot into certain galleries that had the credit that and the buyers that could kind of just let you live. And that model doesn't really exist anymore.
For good and for bad.
Exactly.
It's for good because there's no gatekeeper.
Right.
If your shit's good, like it's going to get out. People are going to buy it. Like it's going to,
for sure.
And for bad, almost because there's no arrow, like the gallery was a good arrow to be like, these people are amazing. And now that like you're relying, almost because we have no gatekeepers at this point, you're relying on someone to kind of point you to the cool stuff.
Right.
And like you can kind of find things online, but like a lot of times like social media influencers, like a certain website like Woe Times Woe is fantastic.
I don't know
or
what that is.
I don't either.
Beautiful Bazaar, like different.
Sure.
Okay.
So different posters that are, they themselves are not the artists, but they're kind of curating some stuff that they like. Right. So those kind of spots are almost now the spots that have taken that position of pointing you to the cool stuff.
Right.
So it's not like there's gatekeepers anymore, but there are definitely influencers and people who are promoting
Yeah.
That you still have to kind of buddy up to, right?
For sure. And even now it's like the gatekeeper seems to be the algorithm,
right?
More than anything.
Yeah. Right.
Cracking that code.
Oh, it's so terrible. I don't know if you guys experienced this, but like early on in the Instagram thing, like it would be like 100 new followers a day or so, right? Like, it was just like boom, boom, boom. Like, and your stuff was getting seen and spread and like whatever. I feel like maybe a year or so ago, it kind of hit that wall and was like, I wasn't seeing any growth or like things.
I feel like it's been longer than a year.
Yeah,
but I switched
like a year and a half probably.
I don't know if you guys have this, but I switched my Instagram over to a business account, and so now you can see the analytics of like a certain time of day.
Right.
And if you'll play the game of yes, at noon on Wednesday, I will post something, you'll get pushed up because that's the time that has been the most engaging. Like they're little games like that like then you'll get past the algorithm.
See, I have I don't know if you've heard me talk about this, but I have the theory of the opposite of like, look at the analytics and just try to do what
Post
they don't.
The lowest time.
Like my thought is that they show you the analytics thinking that they can make you post at these times every day. You know, they're like, oh, this is your peak time, post now. But if you're just like, I don't give a fuck, I'll post whenever I want, then they get upset and they're like, oh, here's followers. That's been my like experience. I don't know if it's true or not, but it's my theory.
Well, when I switched over to business account, I played that game and was like, oh, okay, like so, you know, weekends are dead,
right?
And like it's Monday through Friday, and it's mostly like, you know, Wednesday is like a bit popular day for me. So if I post on that day at that time, like, you know, I felt like they were pushing my stuff up because then I was getting back the 100 followers a day or so coming onto my page. But I don't know. We don't know. We don't know what the analytics are.
I don't know. I just have my own theory that's
working.
Do what they don't tell me to do.
You're doing fine. You're at like 64K, right?
Yeah.
Like, on your thing, you're fine.
And it's been a huge growth since I started kind of, I think I've gained like 40,000 since I started thinking like, fuck what they're telling me to do.
Yeah.
I'm going to do the opposite. And then I just started getting huge growth. I'm like, all right, well, I'll just keep, but I've recently just kind of stopped because I had a bunch of shit. So I've had a freeze in my shit, but it's kind of been like this weird thing where the less I try, the more they reward me. Sure. I've talked about this before, but it's like a drug dealer and I'm the junkie and our relationship is based on, you know, how much I'm willing to ask for. You know, it's like the more I've talked about this, probably our listeners are annoyed by now, but it's the idea that if I come back every day for your drugs, you're not going to treat me good. You're going to treat me shitty and be like, here's your drug, get the fuck out of here. But if I start like cleaning up my life, being like, I don't need you anymore. They're like, hey, here's some of this, try this out, you know, and that's how I think of it now. Is like, they don't want me to leave, so I'm going to pretend I'm leaving.
Right.
And then they go like, oh, well, here's followers, get hooked on us again.
Have you noticed, video content also? Like,
yeah.
That's another thing that like, that immediately will like bumps you to the top of the.
Yeah. Well, I think they're just trying to take over YouTube is my theory. So they're rewarding video and probably like, what's the new thing?
What,
like,
IGTV?
IGTV. That's probably I guarantee if you probably did IGTV nonstop, they would reward you hugely from that just because they want that to be big.
They also don't easily give you an external link, right? If you're like, hey, go look at this. They like don't want you to be, they don't want the consumer or the like viewer to be taken out of the app.
Right.
Yeah. So they give you the one link.
Yeah, Facebook plays that game too.
Yeah, so they give you the one link on your actual bio page, right?
Right.
But if you have a business account, now in the Instagram stories, you have the swipe up
feature.
Yeah. So I've been pushing the shit out of that because you can.
Nice. Yeah.
It's a good move. And the story is the one, and you can kind of share other shit on there too. Easier.
They let you do a lot more in the stories feature.
Yeah.
And sometimes I try to get in the head of like a viewer, like kind of thing, because you want to craft that experience. But I think like the stories thing works really well because a lot of times I do this, like you click on one and you just let it play.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're going to see all the things. So even if anyone on your feed like is active in the stories thing, they're going to see your thing too because it's
right.
That's where they're looking.
Yeah. And
the attention is the key asset, right?
Yeah, we all are like, look at me.
That's right. It was the painter Chuck Close said he painted so big because he would be in these group shows and he'd be like, well, they weren't going to miss me. Whether they hated it or liked it, they weren't going to be like, oh, I didn't see you in there.
That's interesting.
That's a good point.
So, when you look at the analytics, do you see people actually like taking action on your stuff when you have them do it? Because that seems to me be the key. Because when I look at like my impressions and all that, then when you actually look at who actually looked at my profile, and then from there who actually clicked on my website, it's such a small bit of who's actually engaging in the way I want them to.
Oh, sure, but that's always going to be the case, right?
Right. But I just wonder if there's a way to get it higher, and if you figured it out at all.
That story's swipe, because people will, if there's a lead where, like, here's the start of a drawing, like, or like, I'm just thinking in my head, this is not something I've done before, but if you started a piece and they said, to see the final piece, swipe up, like,
sure,
I swipe up, I want to see it, like, what's the, but keeping some content, almost like Instagram or these social media platforms are, they're like a cover. And then you want to go read the rest of the story. Like,
right.
You gotta kick the rest of the story somewhere else so that they can consume your content, because all these social media places are getting like, content is king, right? Like, everyone's coming to consume content, and the kind of content that they want to see. If they love painting, they want to come see your painting. So if you have, instead of pushing all of your video content on Instagram or a social media place where you're giving it away for free there, if you have a little snippet of a time lapse, but then you're like, go to my page to see the whole time lapse, then you're driving more business, like, content toward you, like, that's and then true. Your page becomes the place that they like. Instagram becomes the place that you fish for people who might be interested, and then getting people over to your own page or your own platform or where you really want.
Right.
Like you're saying, you want people to go to your site. If you had the videos on your site, then you push people over to that. Yeah. I don't know. That's the nerdy stuff that I like. I obsess over, but
sure. Yeah.
It maybe works, maybe it doesn't. Like,
yeah, it's hard to say, because these days nobody's really going to websites unless, like you said, there's a reason for people to go.
But I think you guys probably have listeners that are excited about both. Like, because I also, the other thing I don't want to do is present the idea that I'm just all about the business stuff.
Sure.
Because, like, I'm all about the painting stuff. We just happen to do the shitty business stuff
right.
to be able to live off of the painting stuff.
Yeah.
For sure.
So, unfortunately, our jobs have always been make cool shit and get it seen. Those are the two. That's the two jobs as an artist that you have, is make cool shit and get it seen.
Yeah.
The get it seen part has never been easier in the history of the world, because we have social media. We have your fucking smartphone in your pocket, where I can kind of get to you,
right,
like, at all times.
Yeah.
Yeah, get it seen, but then also get people to own it.
Sure. That conversion rate is a small percentage, but when you have, like Josh has, when you have 64,000 people on your Instagram, you only need You only need right. You only need a small percentage of those people to say, I follow you every day. I love what you do. I want to support that.
For sure. Yeah. I'm horrible at the business aspect. Well, I don't know if I'm horrible. I have this weird. Don't try. I'm trying. I'm just trying a different route. I have this weird, like, idea that rolling it out a specific way is very crucial in kind of being successful. And for me, it's like, I don't know, I have this, like, idea of how I want to do it, and I don't. As far as rolling out a product that I want to pitch to my 64,000 people, it's like, for me, it's like, I don't want to feel like I'm selling them stuff all the time.
Absolutely.
So for me, it's so important to make those moments count and make them be hyped on whatever I'm creating and want what it is that I'm creating. And I can only do that if I put a ton of thought into that.
I feel like, and I want to make this more, my model is giving all the time. And it's almost the NPR model, right? Of like, everything's fucking free.
Right.
Until that one time that I'm calling on you, I need your help. I need some shit.
Exactly.
Like, so I really like that, because then it feels like, look, I'm not trying to sell to you all the time. Because a lot of times, because we don't know who's going to see what at what time, we're always putting that link under there, like, prints and books are available here, or like, go buy my stuff, constantly, because you're not sure who's going to see it or when you're going to connect to someone to, like, get the thing. But I'm trying more and more, and I think, like, doing time-lapse video and me investing time in doing more video stuff, it's totally a giving thing, because I'm not getting paid for producing video content, but that video content is going to let Instagram or different places like that bump you up in the feed. You'll get seen by more people. You're also giving way more because at this point, it's almost a given that you start a piece and you take a photo. You get farther into the piece, you take a photo. You take a photo when the piece is finished. You take a photo when the piece is finished in a frame hanging on the wall at the gallery that you were supposed to go in. You take a photo of the people in the gallery looking at the thing that you put up on the wall. You take a picture of the postcard or the print from that someone took from the, like you're documenting the whole process.
Take a picture of the red dot.
Right? Absolutely take a picture of the red dot. That's
That just lets people know you better hurry up. Hurry up.
But documenting the whole process with photos is something we just inherently all do now.
For sure.
Right? But the video one is an extra investment of time that not everyone is doing that I think is important.
It's super important.
And I think that's a big giving thing because you're not really immediately getting value back from that. But the people that are paying attention to your stuff are getting a lot out of that. Yeah. And it's for them. So I love this idea of duck, duck, goose, giving, I'm asking.
Yeah. Recently I was thinking, I don't know if you know who Jimmy DeRista is. He's like a maker of stuff. Those people that make stuff. He's like
Maker Faire or those kind of.
He makes, I don't know, he's just a really amazing maker of things. And, he has on his Instagram stories, he does this really good thing where he just is like, hey, he's like really into really old print presses and things like that, and rebuilding them and kind of making them run again. They're like 200 years old. And he's like, all right, let me fix this bad boy up.
Nice.
And he'll say I'm gonna buy this thing and thread it and use and for people that are makers, it's like he'll do 20 videos in a row of him on this process. And for makers, that's probably huge where they get to just, and it's such a simple little thing. And I'm and he on YouTube, he has 3 million subscribers or something like that. And,
I think taking, the process, because you're giving away, it's not like you go to a car manufacturer and you're like, well, this is a nice car. Can you tell me how you build it?
Right.
but as an artist, everybody wants to know what pencil do you use? What paint was it? What medium? You're mixing up a very specific medium. What's your ratio? You got a terp and then a thing. What is it? Can you tell me what it is? We're also that is part of the giving thing, right? Is that you gotta also and I've just been focused way more on listening to a lot of a lot of business people at a super high end.
Sure.
Is that they lose touch with the end consumer.
Right.
And so they feel like they have to market to a shit ton of people to grab, this is a terrible example, but McDonald's will market to with Spanish on a billboard and then they'll market in English on a thing and then they'll that's random gunshot marketing to everybody. Right. Mm-hmm. But, because they're too big. And I feel more and more because I'm small enough, I have 34,000 people on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. It's not million, followers, influencer level kind of whatever stuff. Sure. But because I'm small enough to yes, reply to everybody who makes a comment. Mm-hmm. Yes, personally answer everything. I feel like I should.
Right.
Because that's part of the giving.
Except for sometimes I get burnt out.
Oh. No, sure, but so in that giving thing, in the spirit of trying to give, ask, is that if someone takes the time, they've been a follower for a while, and they take the time to ask a very specific thing in the comments, I feel it's my duty to reply back to it.
100%.
And especially if they send a private message and they're like, "Hey, I'm also an artist. I could use help with this or that." I'll take the time. Just the other day, someone was asking about pencils,
right?
And they were
"Don't say."
And so, that's the joke, right?
Right.
What pencil is that?
I get it so much. I get it. I don't know, maybe 20 times.
But that's that's the humbleness and the humility, right? Is for that person, you're their favorite artist,
right?
And they're asking you, "Hey, what pencil?" Because they don't know,
right?
That's the humility and the giving of I will take the time to answer this for the 1,000th time,
right?
Because I'm at a small enough level where I can, and I'm trying to.
But for me, it's if I've got it, if I've answered it 4 times in the post, I'm you gotta.
Well, what about the one you get where you posted the drawing and you said right under it, like, it's a Prismacolor, or it's a 4B graphite, or it's a whatever, and then the first or second comment is like, hey, what pencil is that?
Yeah. Or I always feel like there's like this weird thing where they're trying to figure out, it's like if I answered all the questions I think you would ask about the mediums, and they're like, so what eraser do you have on the pencil? Or something like that. It's just like, are you just trying to figure out, like, you could ask me like, how, it's like, I would prefer you, if you're trying to get my attention in some weird way, which I feel like a lot of the time that's what it is. Like, I feel like in that scenario, maybe just be like, hey, what's up? You know what I mean? I don't know. Like, for me, it seems like that would be, like, I have the best conversations with my followers that are much more like conversational.
Sure.
Not you trying to get out of me anything. Just saying like, hey, I'm an artist. Whatever. Like, I don't know, something like, I really like this, but if they can ask me something where we're just having a conversation, then I will literally just talk to you back and forth for as long as you want.
Sure.
But if it's like, what kind of pencil, then it's like, all right, well, you might get an answer, but that's like, you might get like pencil or whatever.
Well, here's how far I go the other way, is that someone sent me, maybe yesterday or the day before yesterday, and they were like, it was a new follower. A lot of times on the other giving thing that I try to do is like every new follower, I message back to them like, hey, thanks for following.
Oh, dude.
I do. Or try to, especially nowadays more, because hearing about this marketer influencing thing and like the bigger business thing is that I'm not at that level, so I don't have to act like I'm that. You know how a lot of artists like, oh, well, I'm, I don't know, they have
kind of a big deal.
Yeah. And no one's a big deal.
Right.
So
it's a Jay-Z line, something about like, you guys, I've tried to say this line like twice, but it has to do with like, you guys think you're hot shit, but you're not hot shit. Like
there's always somebody better, man.
Yeah, like he's Jay-Z. You guys think you're something cool. He's like, you're not. It's just like, thank you, Jay-Z, for putting it out there.
But how far I go the other way is that it was a new follower. I had replied back to them like, hey, thanks for following. And they were like, can I ask you a question? I said, sure. They asked a question about pencils. This person, if they listen to this, is going to hear that. And I'm also setting myself up for getting a million messages, right? But
our listeners will fuck with you too. They do that to me all the time. Like, just listen to the newest episode. What kind of pencil are you using? I'm like, fuck.
But this person was kind of new, and I liked their work actually. And they had a question about a pencil, and so they were like, "Can I get like you use They asked because I use Prismacolors. So like, you use Prismacolors, why? Because everything's like other people use graphite or charcoal or whatever. And so that was an honest question. So like I said, well, it's the blackest thing. Like graphite will never be black. It's always a dark gray.
Right.
No matter what. He's like, well, what about a 10B? And I was like, all right, here we go. So I pulled out a 10B. I pulled out my Prismacolor. I pulled out a piece of charcoal, and I did a value scale with each of them. I took a photo of the pencils that I used. I took a photo of the value scale that I just made, and I messaged it to him. And I was like, here you go.
Right.
Graphite will never be as black as this Prismacolor. So that's why I use it. And I think they were excited. And that's the kind of thing where you can give back value. Is like, it took me less than a minute to do that.
For sure.
And hopefully that's something really meaningful for that person. Because I took the time.
Yeah.
And I think
how'd they respond back to you?
They were very excited.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
But that's that kind of comment I would enjoy as well. Like them saying like, why do you use that rather than this? It's like, all right, well, we're having a discussion here.
Right.
Like we're talking. You put in enough research to know, like, I don't know, maybe he asked you what kind you use before you told him Prisma, but if he put in like the extra work to be like, I noticed you use color pencil, why not? Then that to me is like, all right, well, like me growing up, I was always like trying to be a detective of what artists were using and kind of then trying to find it wherever I could and trying it out.
I know, isn't it frustrating that it's so easy now?
Yeah. And it's like,
I know when I was a kid, I would scour the back of like, I was way into comics, and like sometimes in the back of the comics, like especially indie creators, they would say like different materials that they were using and stuff. And I was like, oh, that's the key.
Right.
Like that fucking rapidograph, 005 is like that's why. That's why. So like I have to search out and get that pen or like get the thing. So I get it. But now that we're on the other side, I feel like it's my duty to answer every one of those fucking questions.
But for me, it's like I love when someone seems like they put a little like they put a little detective work into it.
You give a little more.
Then I'm like, cool, I'm going to talk to you way harder.
Yes.
If you're just like, what kind of pencil, then I'm like, I might answer, I might not. You know,
the other one I think too is like to go back to like, oh, like you're not special, or you're not like, you know, like you're not Jay-Z or whatever.
Right.
Is that through the course of your day, how many people are as excited about a fucking pencil as this kid talking to you?
Right.
And the rest of your day, you walk through the world, you get your cup of coffee at Starbucks, you do the thing. They don't give a fuck about the pencil that you use or the thing that you do. So this kid who's like excited and giving you this attention and like coming to you for an answer, like, answer his fucking question.
I mean, I answer like 90%, but then I get burnt out sometimes from like, I just answered this question 100 times.
Yeah.
I'm done today. Like,
you know what? In that case, you have like a little note app or something on your phone where you have some stock answers where they're you say this is my palette list, this is my whatever, and then you can copy paste.
Well, I have like a highlight video on my Instagram where it's like FAQ. So
there you go.
I haven't done the drawing segment of that. I've only done my painting supplies, so I have to get that done. But usually, if it's something painting related, I'll say like, I'll give them an answer and I'll say, look at my highlight FAQs. You can get the rest of my process for painting.
So here's another, because I'm so excited about the art and the business side of things. The business side of things is if you had a, what is it called? Like if you had a link to
like an Amazon affiliate thing,
Amazon affiliate. When you said these are the things I use, if any of those people that you referred over bought something, you'd get a piece of that cash.
Yeah, that's probably a good move. I should do that.
Yeah.
But I suck at that. I'm also just like.
I saw another painter had that, and I was like, "That son of a bitch! That's a great idea."
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have that on mine, but I don't think anybody's bought anything from me yet.
But let's say you taught like you were teaching like a workshop. Or something.
that's
you can be like, hey, go get all this stuff.
Exactly.
And then, like, 6 people buy it.
Class list. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. That's a good move. I don't teach at all. But do you teach at all?
I used to.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, back. So I'm from Ohio. And before I moved
Can you move your mic just a tad bit? Just move it to yeah.
Good. So when I was in Ohio, I taught a few classes.
How'd you like that?
Private schools. I loved it. So that feeling you get of the person asking the question about the pencil and you're like a little, it was amazing because all day long I taught like probably teens to a little younger. And it was for a private school. And there's some after school programs like the sort of enrichment where school doesn't have an art program, but they kind of have a stipend to have this after school, different people come in and teach and do things.
Right.
And so I was doing that. And it was amazing because you felt like they were really engaged and excited. Right. And so and every little thing you teach them is fucking magic. Right. So you're like, oh, we hold your pencil like this and do this thing and it makes this kind of mark. And then they like kind of do it and they go, I'm doing it. Like, right. And they're off and running. And like, it's like you taught them how to ride a bike and they're just like tearing off and, riding all over the place. And they're so excited. But they're also like little sponges and they constantly like need attention and information. So at the end of the day, you're exhausted. But it's a good kind of exhausted because you they were excited and you get as much energy back as you were putting out, and
for sure,
like they genuinely were excited to be there.
That's awesome.
That's cool.
And this was like a pretty young age group.
Yeah, like 12, 13. I think the oldest kids we had were like 16, 17 maybe.
Were you ever showing them how to paint dark stuff?
No.
That'd be hilarious.
No, I didn't. None of that stuff went there. No. But I was trying to do stuff that was like a little more like if you could take, because I love that high and low culture idea. We had a day of the month back then when the museum was free on Thursdays. So I would take a little field trip over to the museum with them, and we would make little sketchbooks, and they would come over and draw stuff like at the museum. So so I felt like I was giving a lot to them because they got to go to the museum, which a lot of them had never been before. And we would take turns and do figure drawing, and I would do measure figure drawing. I don't know if you guys ever, measure things.
Yeah.
That's like the most important skill I feel like as an artist is that measured drawing skill.
Yeah, probably.
Use it constantly. So I wanted to teach them that right away, even though they were like 7 to 16-year-olds. I didn't want to dumb it down. I wanted them to do the same kind of things that high school and college level kids were doing. And then if they didn't understand something, we would not dumb it down, but I'd explain it in simpler terms.
Okay.
But a great way to do that measured figure drawing stuff is to like have a group of kids, and one of them jumps up on the table, and everybody draws from Sue or Johnny or whoever, and they take turns doing that. So that not everybody's like the model every time or like whatever, but they would take turns doing that every day. And I was teaching them to measure like, well, hey, if the top of his ear lines over with the edge of his eyebrow, and we teach them little things like that. And then I was like, once you get that, you can measure something else and everything. Like, so I was teaching them measured figure drawing at like 7-year-olds. But what we had in class for those kids was like manila paper and crayons. And so they were a little stifled by like, well, like, how do I do that with a crayon? So before class, I would go in early. And I had an assistant, and I would have the assistant jump up on the table, and I would do a portrait of her in a red crayon on the manila paper. And then I'd be like, I made that with a crayon, so I don't want any of your excuses. You can fucking make things with a crayon.
He said fucking?
Yeah.
I didn't say fucking to them.
You stupid fucking excuses. I'm sick of them.
But I love that. And actually, in a couple of my first books, I have some drawings that were made with crayons. And I do that every once in a while just to show, like, the materials don't matter, man.
Right.
Like,
for sure.
Yeah, it's the craftsmanship of the thing, not the materials just don't matter.
I totally, yeah. I said that to a lot of the people that ask about pencils.
Yeah.
That when I'm in like a moody or mood, I'm like, look, the pencil isn't important. Just like practice your craft.
It's like that photographer thing, right? Like, what's the best camera? The one you got with you?
Yeah.
Like, what's the best pencil? I don't know. The one you're actually going to sit down and use?
Yeah.
Like,
I know my wife's still learning that camera thing. She's like, I want this new camera. I'm like, you haven't even learned your camera yet.
Well, digital's a little different though, right? Because they keep improving things.
Right. But she has a really good camera.
If you just grab an old like analog camera, like it's not going to get better. It's just like, it's a camera.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, but she has a good digital camera.
Yeah.
She's just like, this person on YouTube uses this camera. I'm like, they all use different fucking cameras. There's no secret. Just learn yours.
Yeah.
At least learn it first.
Oh man, it's like those, do you ever see like when musicians take like kids' instruments and play like a song?
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah,
so
like,
good.
You ever seen that? It's like a documentary of 3 guitarists. It's Jack White.
Oh,
the guy from
what's that called?
U2, and the guy from I'm so bad at fucking names. The guy from Led Zeppelin. Yeah,
okay.
And
they're playing on kids' instruments.
Oh well, there's a point where Jack White, he grabs like a board and nails a nail, pulls the string, ties like a Coke can to it or something, and starts playing it, and you're like, what the fuck, man?
That's
like,
fantastic.
Like ridiculously good.
Who is it like on the Jimmy Fallon show? Is it The Roots?
Oh, sure.
Like
yeah.
a backup band, and they totally played like they had a little the like baby piano.
Oh, sure.
Doing that. Like, I love that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. They're like a legit band.
Yeah. Well, it's like on a lot of you see on Instagram like those people that do the little moleskin notebooks with the ballpoint pen, right? It's like that's just the most basic shit.
For sure. Yeah. I when I was like learning how to draw, all I would use was cheap ballpoint pens and a shitty sketchbook.
I used Sharpies. And I would get a grayscale out of when the Sharpie would kind of
die.
Yes.
Oh, sure.
And you kind of smear it, and it kind of would give you that gray tone. And I even did some early I was lucky that my high school had this exchange program thing where you could go take figure drawing classes at the local college if you were in that certain program, whatever. So like as a freshman in high school, like I did pretty well, and they were like, as a sophomore, do you want to take classes at the figure drawing thing? And I was like, yes, like that's amazing. And so the other students were college level people. They just let us draw with them, and they all got annoyed because I was using the Sharpies, and it was like a terrible smell because I was breaking open brand new Sharpies to get the black, and I had this whole box of them. That's all I knew. I didn't know like fancy materials.
For sure.
I was getting this gray out of just the dried up Sharpie.
Yeah, but I mean, whatever works.
Totally, whatever works.
Yeah, I totally. Yeah, and that's kind of one of the things that annoys me about the pencil question is like, just keep working on your craft techniques, learning how to measure things, block things, and all those kind of like little things. Like learn that thing, learn how to like see shapes and and all those things.
Paintings are way crazier too because a lot of like really amazing fine art painters, and you look at their brushes, and their brushes are all these fucked up, like sticky looking things that are like,
sometimes,
how do you even? One of my all time favorite painters is Phil Hale.
Oh, sure.
And if you've ever seen his brushes, they're just some fucked up student grade, like
really?
nylon shitty. Yeah, there's some really messed up brushes, but so the materials don't matter. Like,
for sure.
He's just found a way to like push that around a certain way that works for him. It's fine.
Right,
Whatever works for you.
Exactly.
It's fine. I know a lot of people give mechanical pencils like a hard time too because they're.
Really? I only use mechanical for the most part.
There's a lot of people who give mechanical pencils a hard time, like people that are fine artists.
Come see me, bro.
Yeah.
I don't particularly like them, but there's not a pencil that I don't like. Like, I kind of could use anything; it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
I only use the stuff that I use out of nostalgia. Taking a Prismacolor and sharpening it with a blade or with a straight razor, like I like to do, just has a certain nostalgia for me because I grew up as a poor kid in the middle of nowhere, and we didn't have a pencil sharpener, and my dad sharpened pencils with a pocket knife.
Right.
So that feeling of like sharpening a pencil with the straight razor or with the blade is like. Just is like a comforting. It's like a warm hug or like a hot chocolate to me.
Yeah.
Is sharpening it like that before I start is just like, oh, like I get a kick out of it.
But it
makes no difference between that and a mechanical pencil. It doesn't really matter.
So you don't make the point longer?
I do.
Okay. Because that's usually like for charcoal
the reason
drawing,
for sharpening it like that is that it stays sharp longer, and I don't have to sharpen it often.
Right.
And I kind of felt I'll fall out of that just because it takes a little bit of time to sharpen it like that. And so I'll fall out of that and use like a Dahl 133 or like a Coom long point sharpener that I like a lot.
Oh yeah, I just picked up one of those because I saw it on your live stream.
Oh, nice. yeah. So
like
the one blade cuts away the wood, the other one shapes the thing, so you get less of that breaking the lead. Because when you have the one single blade that is trying to cut two materials that are of different consistencies, of course you're going to have like the torque it takes to cut the wood is different than it takes to shape the lead, and so that's when they end up breaking. So that's why that Coom is fantastic because it carves away the wood and then shapes the.
Yeah, it gives a nice little razor sharp point.
Pro tip.
Pro tip. I only have. I don't even sharpen. I always sharpen. If I sharpen, I do use pencils for paintings and stuff like that. And I only
you draw on top, right?
Yeah.
So you're doing a lot of like drawing, then painting in acrylic, and then drawing on top.
Oil.
Oh, you're doing Prismacolor or color pencils or pencils on top of oil?
My like drawings, my like little drawings I'm doing.
Yeah.
I do drawings, then acrylic, and then maybe a little drawing on top, but not too much. And then my paintings, I'll draw on top of my paintings with just graphite pencil.
Yeah.
But those are oil.
Are you spray sealing that though, so it's not like going to move around?
Yeah, I spray seal it.
And then do you varnish on top of that too, or no?
Yeah.
Nice. What I found too with the those sometimes you get these weird mixes of materials that are fantastic, and then in that case, when someone asks you what something is, it does matter.
Right.
But I found that if you do a Prismacolor drawing, because it's wax base underneath, you can draw or smear pastel and charcoal on top of it, and the Prismacolor won't move. So I don't have to spray fix it. I can just go right to the thinner, messier material because the pencil won't move around.
Right.
And I can even smear that around, and the underneath drawing won't be disturbed.
I was going to say something, but I totally lost. What were we talking about right before that? Sharpener.
Oh, sharpener? Yeah. No.
My issue with sharpeners is that I buy them and lose them, but I always have a section for X-Acto knives. Yeah. So I've quit buying sharpeners.
Now, if you were buying the more expensive Coom long point sharpener at like $10 to $20, you would not lose. So you're like, oh shit, I can't lose that pencil sharpener.
See, my issue is I have like a place for each thing, and I don't have a spot for sharpeners, and I don't want to build one. Like I would need it to go in its own little cubby. Yeah. And I would need it to be able to. How big is this thing, by the way?
Oh, it's pretty small. Yeah, it's a small. Yeah.
Maybe. But it's not like because I have one little copper one that I keep in my bag.
Yeah. Is it like a bullet, like the little bullet one? Yeah.
I keep one of those in my bag for my travel pack.
Right.
Just because I don't want to carry an X-Acto knife.
It's probably like the length of 2.5 of those.
I don't have it in my. I have a little bag that says things of daily necessity.
That's a cool little bag, actually.
And so I have that's my black pencil and white pencil.
Nice.
In respective black and silver holders.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. And then that's the
Okay.
Yeah, so I sharpen with that. And then the pencil holders actually work as work twice. They work by holding it and being able to sharpen more of the pencil when you get toward the end. But then they also, if you've sharpened it and you put it in backwards and tighten the thing, it'll protect the...
Damn,
does it?
Giving up all the tips.
Awesome.
I know. When you pulled it out, I was like, why hasn't he sharpened them yet?
Yeah, exactly.
So that... Oh, yeah, right.
That's genius.
So that protects the end, and I can literally put that in my pocket, and it's not going to disturb anything. It's like solidly in there.
Yeah, so for those who can't see what he's doing, he's shoving his pencil into his pencil holder.
There's not a lead holder, but a pencil holder that has like a larger diameter to fit a whole pencil into, and then there's like a little threading to like tighten the metal so that it holds the pencil inside there. And the point of it is when you sharpen...
And this is a pencil holder, like, I don't know if they're going to... Some people are going to grasp what we mean by pencil holder. To hold like a one singular pencil.
Yes.
Not like a pencil holder, like something that holds pencils.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Right. So it's a metal tube with some rings on the end.
Yeah.
And a whole pencil fits inside of that, and then you tighten the rings so that it's tight inside there. So the point of it is like when you sharpen your pencil too far down and you can't really hold on to it anymore, you tighten it into that, and it holds the stubby little pencil so you can still keep drawing with the rest of the pencil.
Right.
It also works if you tighten that up really tight, you can also put it into a sharpener, and it will sharpen more of the pencil than you could have sharpened before. But the hack that I have for it is if you sharpen that pencil, any pencil, take it out, put it in there backwards so that the tip of the pencil is in toward the tube, and you tighten the end, it will not move around, and it will protect the end of the pencil. You can just stick it in your pocket and carry it around and have a sharpened...
Yeah, so you'd have to resharpen it every single time because the tip broke.
Right.
That's
you carry them around in a pouch or thing, and they're shaking around, and they get fucked up every time.
Right.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But the benefit of using the mechanical pencil is you're never sharpening it, really.
Yeah.
Although I have a friend who will sharpen a mechanical pencil with a tiny little thing. He's very obsessive. But
I'll like if I need something really, I'll like like right on the edge so that it's got like a really.
You'll shape the little just 5mm lead on a piece of paper, turning
even
it. Even
my 3mm, I'll sharpen it if I need to get it really.
I'll have to send
small.
you a link. There's a little sharpener thing that will sharpen your 0.3mm or 0.03mm thing. It's this little German hand sharpener that will put a little point. Like a sharpened point on a mechanical pencil. It's fantastic.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah, the problem is I'm probably doing this and no one is going to notice the little shit I'm doing for myself of like the little details by sharpening my 0.3.
That's why you take pictures of that on Instagram.
Yeah, exactly.
Take it with a microscope.
and I market the shit out of the fact that I'm sharpening my 0.3. That and people's minds will get blown.
Do you even sharpen your 0.3, bro?
Yeah. Learn, bro. Read a book. For sure. Well, we should probably talk about your painting. I don't know. Where the hell is my phone? That's probably over there. Can you pull it on your tablet? Should we pause this real quick?
Yeah, let's just pause it. Okay.
All right. Do you have a sound effect?
It's time to be critiqued by waiting to dry.
Boom. Awesome. So we have these two paintings that you sent us to critique, I guess. It's barely not even a critique. So they're the two paintings. One's of a female, one's of a male. I don't know if you need to look at them at all.
Oh no, I have it in my head.
Hell yeah! And both of them, they have the figure. You do these like clean lines across where it's like the head is like cut in, but it doesn't really. It reads as half the head is missing, but at the same time, it's not reading as like. Almost like someone chopped it off, I guess, is the way to... I do this a bit myself where I'll just do like a line like this is where the body ends. And sometimes I wonder if it annoys people because I'll put them in... I'll make it seem like they're in water, but I won't like curve the body. You know? I'll just do a straight line like that's how they're in the water. So get used to it.
Yeah. I like just literally cutting them.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm not that great a sculptor, but every time I go to the show once a year, twice a year, Monsterpalooza in LA, and it's a special effects industry show for people who do the concept art and movie makeup and creature design, that kind of thing. And so I always get inspired to oh man, I want to sculpt now.
Right.
So I feel like, and I'm going to try to do this at some point, but if I were a sculptor, I would sculpt that head and I would literally chop it, chop it off and do other things to it and things so. I'm kind of doing that in the painting. I built that up, and I had when I was in the drawing phase, I had the whole head there, and I kind of chop it off and do things to it. And,
That's cool. And so both of them have their heads chopped. One's a female with a snake inside of her. The other one's obviously a Catholic priest. With one of the interesting things about the Catholic priest that I really like is his hand specifically.
Yeah, exactly.
It's this green hand, and the positioning of it almost looks reptilian. Like it looks like he has 3 limbs, even though if you look at it, he has all 5.
Yes.
But the way it's positioned,
that position is like a classical painting thing where they're pointing up to God.
Yeah.
And I'm showing, so that piece is called Blind Faith. And so by chopping the head off, I'm showing that he's blind, he's blindly leading, blindly following this thing. And the hand to God is literally, so it is a green sort of color, but I wanted it to be it's dying, it's changing, it's
decaying, like gangrene or something?
Yes, because he's you ever see that Michelangelo painting where he reaches out and Adam is touching and the hand of God, they're reaching toward, I don't know if they actually touch or if they're just reaching toward one another.
I don't think they completely
touch each other, but not where you expect.
So anyway, in that painting, I'm trying to show that he's blindly following, but where he's literally the part where he would be touching the hand of God is falling apart. It's fucked up. It's decaying. It's so it's bad for him. To blindly follow along is a detriment. It's a bad thing for him. Literally, he's the part where he's touching God is becoming fucked up.
So did you grow up religious at all?
Yes and no. So kind of Bible Belt sort of Baptist, in southern Ohio. I had an uncle who was a preacher.
Okay.
Oh.
And he just embezzled a bunch of money. And so I learned very early on the corruption that can happen in organized religion.
Sounds like you need Jesus. Take it away, Sergio. Tell him a little bit about your friend.
So, not that it, a lot of my drawings and paintings have these religious undertones. That one, not so much of an undertone.
Right.
But just...
love you, God! God damn it. No one's going to get that reference, by the way.
Yeah.
But mostly just a question, because when I grew up, everything was you were blindly leading or following along this thing. And, from my personal experience, we know the religion, it's that... power corrupts, absolute power corrupts, absolutely. So it's when you have a sort of a religious moment where you're oh, take care of your fellow man, and then these are all good ideas, right? But then when they become an organized religion, that's when someone's personal ambition creeps in and ruins it for everyone, or fucks up the thing that was supposed to be a good thing.
Right.
Yeah. I totally get that. I mean,
bro, if you're fucking Jesus Christ, I'll be the Antichrist, man. Fuck that shit.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up religious, and I'm very much not religious at all anymore. And it's not necessarily based off of power, but just the hypocrisy that kind of comes along with a book where it's pretty much, I don't know. I mean, even the book and the people that follow it, there's a lot of hypocrisy that seem to go with those two things. But it's the inability to understand that humans have, fucked up things and are dark, and I don't know. It's whatever.
But I was always drawn to those like, you know, a lot of horror movies have like creepy religious aspects to it.
Right.
And
Oh,
stuff
yeah.
too, and yeah, it's fun.
It's funny how creepy religion can be.
Right,
Creepy, man.
exactly. Yeah.
Look,
is.
it's written into the story. There are demons. There's demons and shit.
Right.
Like, so there's like there's creepy stuff like from the get, right?
Right.
But even like you can just make a character of a nun be creepy. It's like it has nothing to
Just
do.
the presence of a nun is creepy.
Yeah, exactly. Like going into big like crazy churches, they have this creepy, weird vibe to them in general.
Yeah.
They
also love torture porn. Just so you know, because their logo is a dude getting crucified. Okay,
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
So they're all about it. They're all about the torture.
facts, which we've already established isn't that great of a horror genre.
Yeah.
And you mentioned a bit earlier that the female figure was also had
religious undertones, because in the like the speaking in tongues, the being taken over by the spirit and speaking in tongues, that kind of thing. So the title of that piece is "Devil's Got Her Tongue."
okay.
That's and awesome. So it's literally she's been split in half, and the tongue that would have come out in that place is turned into a snake.
Right.
Which goes back to like the Eve and the snake and the apple and that whole
for sure
thing. Maybe not as directly as, you know, illustration might do it, but it's all the bells and whistles are there to give someone that information. Yeah,
I agree. Was her hair being a certain length, was that also important to kind of as a religious undertone? I don't know.
That's design of the piece.
Okay.
It just supports that long panel.
Okay. Because it does kind of apply.
And that piece was actually done for a gallery in LA called Copro.
Okay.
Or Copro. And it was part of my friend Alan Williams had a solo show there. And then he also had a second room that was a curated show that he curated of on the topic of personal gods.
Okay.
Oh.
And so that was my piece for that.
That's awesome. Cool. There is, so your work does have a wide rangingness of creepy. There's like the darkest creepy to like this one, which it isn't as like haunting or something like that. There is much more of an aesthetic beauty to it, like a more normal beauty to it than the average. I don't know, like something just like a face with half of it being ripped off or something like that.
I don't think so. A lot of times when people think of horror, because my work's not specifically like horror, there's a lot of dark surrealism as well, and things like that. So it's not. I think when a lot of people think like just of the main subject, like header being horror, they think of like, you know, stabbings and things like these kind of like over the top like sort of things, and it's way more fun to be like a little subtler, right?
Right.
And so if I can lure you in from across the room of someone going like, oh, look at that beautiful like head study, or and they get closer and like, oh shit, look at the things coming out of her, like that's you know, in a little bit subtler way, like that's more fun. I literally creeped up on you.
Right.
Yeah, I like your series. You've been calling them little ghoulies.
Yeah.
They're like these like beautiful women, but they're turning kind of like into skulls.
Yeah, the first one I did of that I called Pretty Pretty. Okay. It's like two things that I think are pretty, like women and like the creepy bits are like the two things that I'm attracted to. And so like I like skulls equally as much as I like in a painting or in a visual aesthetics.
Right.
Like I'm as drawn to a beautiful face as I am to a skull.
Right.
And so I was just mashing the two things together. And I was trying to do it in a way that it kind of like fades away. I don't want them to feel like zombies or like that kind of. I don't want to go to that, which that then makes it very horror, like just for horror's sake.
Right.
I wanted to present the two things mashed together, like two great tastes that taste great together.
Yeah.
The pretty
like,
and the creepy.
Nuggets and ranch dressing.
Yeah, but so that was, and so those little studies, I love those. And I've been doing those often, and I'm planning on. That's probably something that I don't have that in my system yet. I'm still gonna be making those for a while.
Do you plan on like making them into a book or any sort of something beyond that, or is it
Maybe,
just mostly for personal?
They all
work?
are square. Which maybe just Instagram's dictating to me. Yeah. I'm literally feeding the machine of the square. Of the square. But they're just fun, and I also like making square pieces because they stack up well. Like when you have a wall of them, to see all these like square pieces like together is like really nice. Also, if someone wanted to buy several at a time, that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
They could recreate that wall of
for sure.
Yeah.
You know, and I think a block of 9 is probably what they need. Like 3.
Special discount. Coupon code.
What's the next level up for a perfect square?
No, but they're just super 12 by 12. Do a 12 by 12.
Yeah. 16? Yeah. 16.
6 feet by 6 feet, what you're really looking for.
Yeah.
That's what you want. With each painting being a foot 12 by 12. And then
Yeah, that would sound like it would be a great piece on someone's wall.
Yeah, no, should get that.
And you would have years of things to look at. You would find things years later and be like, well, I never noticed that about that piece.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
no, I just love doing those little paintings. They're also great entry. Like, so I always keep thinking of like, you know, you want to do these like big paintings because you want to do like a big painting for a show or a thing. But you keep I think like it's nice to keep going back to like a smaller, more affordable, like entry level, like sort of a thing. And they're just kind of a sweet spot of like a little painting that's nice to have, and that doesn't take up a lot of space. So and those little squares can kind of fit anywhere. You know, if I was a collector, which I kind of don't, I only like when I trade with someone or if someone's given me a painting, like I have what I consider a really nice little collection, but it's like 4 pieces or something. But they're painters that either gave me something, or someone gave me a piece where we traded.
Right.
Yeah.
But if I were collecting, I would want a bunch of little things from lots of people.
Right.
Or, you know, a painter that I love, I'd want to keep coming back and getting something every year or something. But it's limited real estate, right? Like,
yeah.
If I buy a big, like 2 foot by 3 foot painting, I don't have the room to, like, that would be it. Like, I'd put that on the wall and that'd be it. Like, so I think it's fun to make littler pieces.
Yeah. Yeah. I love little pieces. Just, I mean, my walls are covered.
Because those are the 2 biggest impacts, right? When you walk into a gallery is like one giant painting on the wall that's a big narrative piece and you're like, fuck, that's so good. Right? Or a wall of like 20 little things and you're like, oh shit, this guy's working his ass off. There's 20 little paintings over there. Like,
the worst thing is a large, shitty painting.
Yes, you don't want that.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you guys talk about where you're, but we're recording this in Sergio's studio, and I was immediately drawn to the little wall of studies that you have over there. So just to see like a bunch of little things is like super impressive. Oh man, it's been working hard.
Well, mainly because my wall here is blank. It's just got one blank canvas on it. So
yeah, that's the large one.
That's the large one.
That's the large one he's talking about.
You're ready. As soon as you finish that large one, you got a show.
Exactly. Yeah.
Done.
Quite literally, yeah.
Yeah, fuck. I've never worked that large. I changed my mind. I have. When I was younger, it was really shit.
In a different medium?
It was oil.
Oh.
It was like, I tried my hand at oil when I was young, and I was like, that was fun. Never again.
The little ones are fun, too, because you can carry them around, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
They're just intimate. You're like holding this little thing in your hand enough.
Yeah. I've been doing a lot of little drawings recently, and it's great because I've been in my house because I work in my studio, my detached garage, and it's freezing in there. So I've been in my house and I just have a little bar stool at my couch and I'm just sitting on, it's like my little tiny desk. It's like the smallest footprint of a studio in my house. It's great. I love small.
I was telling you guys earlier, I work in a tiny little offshoot of my kitchen.
Oh, nice.
3 feet by 4 feet, tiny little spot.
It's brutal.
Yeah, no, it's small.
You
don't need a lot of space. I mean, especially when you do like detailed little pieces, especially like what you do too. Like it doesn't take up a lot of space. It's
right, exactly.
Real estate of this little thing that's sitting in front of me that I stare at for
Yeah, it's funny
20 hours.
It's like one of those things where it's like, when you're like having trouble with the painting, you take a couple steps back. It's like for you that you're like, and then walk into your kitchen.
Yeah.
I love to cook too. So it's like it's kind of like I don't know. It's like making stuff in the kitchen is just always like an inherent thing anyway. So like
for sure,
I'm always cooking on something.
Too.
Literally.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, you can paint and stir the sauce at the same time.
Yeah.
It's pretty awesome.
I have 2 larger paintings now. That's like kind of a departure. Like they're 2 feet by 3 feet, and working on those to finish for Monster Palooza in a couple months.
Because for you, your paintings, at least from what I can see, it seems like there's a huge, almost like gap between each painting. I don't know if it takes a ton of time for you to.
Yeah, I'm a slow painter,
and
people say that I'm not, but I feel like I'm a super slow painter. But I'm just obsessive. I'm sitting like noodle. I like every square inch to be like a noodle little thing.
Yeah, you could see that in your work too. You'll go off on these like little mini designs, little mini pattern works, whatever. Yeah. And your drawings or paintings, and you're like, oh, it looked like he kind of geeked out right there for a bit. I mean,
they also help lead those kind of patches, like help. We were talking about the title leading someone around, but those little patches of detail or things or designs, like literally, like lead you around the
for sure. I could see that. There was one you did. It was like a drawing. I can't remember. It was a female and she had like something going around her. I would have to pull it up, but there's no internet here, so.
I do that a lot where
your phone stop working.
Probably. I never get signal here.
Oh, really?
I'll keep looking. Go on.
I do that a lot though, where something will like encircle something else, and it's just kind of it's a bullseye. Look like just telling you, look right here.
Yeah, whatever one I'm talking about. I just really like the way you did it, like the style of it was, I don't know, in my opinion, was amazing. I was like, damn, that's cool. How do I steal that? How do I unobviously steal that? One of the other things is you seem to have like a lot of like sea, ocean, animal things. I don't know if there's a reason behind that.
I think so, because when you get asked these questions like a couple of times, you kind of like, you have like I don't know, but like then it's kind of stuck in your head, and you kind of keep going back to like, well, why do I do that? Right. And I think it's because when I was a kid, my dad drug me to the lake like every weekend because he loved fishing. I don't know, I was not like into the fishing thing, but when he would catch things at a certain point, instead of, so I would fish too because I was a kid. That's what you do. Like you do what your parents do or whatever. But at a certain point, I would just start bringing a sketchbook to the lake, and then I would draw stuff. And then when he'd catch things, I would draw the fish and I would draw the things. And so I think when you're a kid, a lot of things get imprinted on you. So I just love sea creatures and stuff like that. 'Cause it's like one of the first subjects that I would put in my work. I'd also print them, which I found out later was a whole thing in Japan where, like, before photography, when they caught a fish, they would ink up the side of it and
I know what you're talking about.
Press it, and then to show like what the fish looked like, or like to tell your buddy like, hey, I caught this big fish, and you're like, no, you didn't, right? But they had this print, so they're like, look, here it is. Like this is the picture. It literally was their picture of the fish. I didn't know that at the time, but when I was a kid, my dad would drag me to the lake every weekend. We would, I had this ink and pieces of cardboard. And when he caught the fish, like when he wasn't looking, because if he caught me doing it, he would be upset. But like I would ink up the fish and I would press it onto the cardboard and have these like prints of the fish like on the cardboard, and I would like hang those in my room.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And you didn't know that was a thing?
I didn't know at the time. I didn't know that like fish printing was a thing. I only found that out like a few years ago, and I was like, oh shit, I did that when I was like 12 years old. That's like a thing. Like, I came up with it, I thought.
I'm a genius.
Well, technically, you did. I talked about it before where, like, I have this weird obsession with being ignorant to other, like, to techniques and things. Just so, well, not necessarily techniques, but more like art history.
Right.
Just so that I can have the original idea for myself.
Totally.
It's like the fact that I thought of it is like... It's like one of the most gratifying things as an artist. So like when I hear about it afterwards, like, oh, this person did something like that, I'm like, fuck yeah. Like I didn't know that. So I'm happy that I learned it after the fact, because then it would deter me from creating what I created. It's I don't know. It's whatever.
So I like that as an idea because it makes you a wise child towards like everything that you're approaching.
Mm-hmm.
But then the super left brain, like knowing the history of the art and the names and the things like that would probably be like, I'd be real frustrated with you like in the moment that it happened.
What do you mean?
Because I'd be like, no, you didn't create the fucking Chuck Close did this fingerprint painting like back in the 70s. You didn't come up with it. Like I'd probably get all worked up.
Well, I'm okay with admitting after the fact.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, that's cool that they did it first. But it's I also think it's healthy for me as an artist to work out that like original thoughts.
Yeah.
You know, like a
little selective ignorance.
To help my like creative process. It's like working out my creative process. Like I'm strengthening that skill of like thinking for myself originally and wherever it might lead.
Yeah, because the hardcore reverse of that is if you knew the history of everything and you were like, well, there's nothing left to do.
Right.
It's all been done.
Exactly.
Like, what do I do now? I'm literally painted into a corner.
Yeah.
It's all happened. I don't know. Like, there's nothing to...
Look, it's been done. Why should I even keep going?
No, I get that.
So, yeah, the willing ignorance is the way to go. For all you listeners out there, don't try to learn. Try your hardest to not learn.
That's why he doesn't want you to ask about pencils.
Exactly. I'm just trying to help you out. I mean, that is a reason.
Right.
I'm like, go, like, be a detective. It's one of the best things about being an artist is it teaches you how to problem solve, right?
Absolutely. Right.
And you saying like, oh, problem solving is asking every artist how they do things. To me, that's like not problem solving. It's not teaching you what the best thing is about being an artist is problem solving, and you're going the easiest fucking route. Like embrace the grind, embrace the fucking struggle, become a detective, try to think on your own. Like, don't fucking try to find all the answers the easy way. I don't know.
This was another Waiting to Dry rant corner.
God damn it. Yeah, that's like my pet peeve with it is like, if I give you every answer you're looking for, then like you didn't get the biggest tool, which is the fucking detective work, which will pass the pencil will give you much more than the fucking answer of the pencil will ever give you.
Well, you know what? The other thing that happens too is you can give someone every single technique and experience and things, and once you get to a certain skill level,
right?
Then you learn that like all that stuff didn't really matter. It's it's the subject and what you're saying.
Exactly.
The technical skill only helps you say it in a better way.
Right.
Or choose to use that technical skill or not use it depending on what you're trying to say.
Yeah, I agree. And exactly. And the ability to be a detective and think at least that you're thinking originally, I think those skills are way more helpful than technique.
Yeah.
You know, being like, oh, how to think of this idea and how to break it down. I know how I can tell this story because I've forced myself to learn it this way, or I want to know how I can execute this big idea I have. How do I go about that? I know already because I've figured it out from here on. You know, like I've done the detective work. I know how to find answers without having to just ask people what pencil they're using.
Yeah.
You know,
and you're literally coming at it from a different perspective. Like if there was a classically trained musician,
right,
and he knew how to hit an E because he had learned how to, like, they taught him how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's like a backwoods musician who doesn't know how to read music,
right,
and he just does everything by sight or by playing it by ear, he's literally going to come up with things differently and from a different perspective because he's not trained all the things.
Sure.
But I mean, you can argue anything from any angle, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And the other aspect of that is if everybody had the same skill level, then it really breaks down to just what you're saying.
Right.
Do you have something to say or not?
For sure.
And like in a race, like in a stock car race, ideally we all have the same car,
right?
So it comes down to your skill level and your choices as to who's going to win, right?
For sure.
Mm.
Although I don't know if there's a winner and a loser.
In art?
In art.
Isn't that frustrating? So the left brain side of me that's like you plan these things out and then this happens. You plan is totally different every time because the playing field constantly changes, right? Mm-hmm. And every person you meet is a different playing field. So like I meet you and you have certain expectations of what you like, your taste level, what you like, why things are good or bad or whatever. Mm-hmm. You have all this you have a defined playing field in your head. And when you come upon someone, the stuff that they're making, you run it through that playing field and you're like, oh, it hits these bells and whistles and I like that guy. I like this stuff, right? But the person next to you comes up, has a whole different definition of what good is, and I lose with them because they don't like what I do.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the frustrating part of being an artist is like you can so I kind of take solace a little bit in the idea of a good one of its kind. So if you say you're an abstract painter, are you a good abstract painter? Like, are you hitting all the bells and whistles of what an abstract painter is and what that means and how, like history of it and all these things? And so you got to define the playing field depending on the person. And so that's the frustrating part about art because
for sure
you could be like, my art's good, and then you like if you're in a different playing field, it's totally meaningless and like is not good in that arena.
Yeah. And even then, it's not guaranteed. Nothing's guaranteed.
Nothing's guaranteed.
There's a show.
It could be the most amazing painting ever, and some kid might be like, "Fucking sucks."
Yeah,
and you're like, "Oh,
yeah." There's a funny story. I had a cousin, or not a cousin, a little nephew, and I was like painting, and he was like, "Oh, yeah, you paint." He was like, he was like in like third grade, and he was like, my friend is better than you. And I'm like, oh yeah, fuck off. Like, he was just like, he draws cars and basketballs and like,
see, he had a whole other different definition
exactly.
And you lost.
Exactly. But I was going to say
you don't draw cars, you're out. That's it.
I just drew a car the other day, 2 days ago. So suck it. I don't even remember my nephew's name. That's how bad I am. I got too many little fucks. But I was watching this show called Crashing. It's a show about comedians. I think HBO makes it. One of those guys. But Pete Holmes, he's like the main character. I don't know if you're familiar with his comedy, but he runs into Ray Romano. And he's supposed to be an up-and-coming artist or comedian, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I've got this idea for a sitcom." And he explains it, and Ray Romano, he's like very standoffish and like whatever. And at the end, Ray Romano's like, "Just fucking get on that stage and keep doing your comedy and getting better, and hopefully you'll get lucky and you'll become famous." But like, don't like shoot for the fame thing, you know? There's like this like thing of like us as artists. I mean, Ray Romano said a lot better than I did, but it was this idea that you just as an artist, you just have to pursue being great.
Yeah.
And as you define it or whatever, but, and don't worry about, I mean, for you, this is hard because it's the left side of your brain, but it's that whole idea of like, we're just trying to pursue the greatness of art, and the whole like success of it is something we have to like learn to let go because it's not guaranteed.
Well, you have to fall in love with the process, and then everything. So you fall in love with the process of making stuff just because you love making the things,
right?
And everything else is a byproduct of that.
Right.
Whether you win, whether you lose, whether someone buys it, whether they don't, like those are all things completely out of your control.
Right.
You can set yourself up for by like we market and we do things, we put things on Instagram, we make like try to make better things. You try to get better as like what your craftsmanship and what you're trying to be more clear in what you're saying and crafting that message and doing all these things. But after that, everything's outside of your control. So it's hard. It's frustrating because it's from a left brain sort of thinking sort of person is that it's not a typical career, right?
Right.
Like my girlfriend is in the medical field, and you go to school and you go to college and you do this and then you get this internship and then you go here and you get all these little check marks next to your name like I accomplished this and I did this, and so you keep getting all these credentials and things and stuff, and you're like clearly you keep rising in your field because you did all the things, right? But as artists, we can do all the things and you can still fail.
Right, for sure. I think
there's no clear path. You just are constantly making things and trying to get better. So you have to let that other stuff go. Like all I can control is like all I can really control. And so I was thinking about this because I was frustrated because I was just drawing and I wasn't painting and I wanted to be a painter and like I'm like, well, I didn't paint today. So then I was like, I had this comforting feeling of if I got up in the morning, I would get up at 5 o'clock. I'm a morning person anyway, but I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I paint for the first 2 hours of the day. No matter what happens the rest of the day, I painted today.
Right.
I'm a painter. I painted.
Right.
So I didn't have that gnawing feeling the whole rest of my day. Like, well, I need to be painting. I should paint. I need to paint.
Yeah.
Like you have that, and I know for every creative person, whether they get to do it full time or not, you have this gnawing feeling that there's something you should be doing.
Yeah.
And if you don't do it in those first couple hours of the day, the whole rest of the day is like, well, that painting I need to get back to that painting. Like
For sure.
Right. And then if you don't get to do it the whole day, then you start getting angry, take it out on other people around you, like fucking like, right. You get really frustrated.
Yeah.
If you haven't made anything for a couple of days, then you're just like really surly and like, you're just really like chop anybody's head off. Right.
For sure.
So what my solace is, I get up 4:50, grab a shower. By 6 o'clock, I'm at the easel. I paint for at least 2 hours. Then whatever happens the rest of maybe I get to paint a little more than that, a little less, whatever. But I put those 2 hours in every morning, and then I don't have that gnawing feeling the rest of the day because I put in my time. Like
That's a good move.
Yeah, that's great advice.
And it's just good to build that habit.
Yeah,
The habit is such a good thing to do.
now for me that's 5 o'clock, and I need that to feel okay the rest of the day. For someone else, it might be like, oh, I do it at night or whatever. But as long as like sometime in the day you make time for that creative thing that you're trying to do,
For sure.
then you scratch that itch, and like that day you can be like, oh, I won. Jerry Seinfeld, the comedian, had this like classic thing of
I've
like
heard
when
of them.
he first started out, he had a calendar above his writing desk, and he said every day, whether it's good, bad, whatever, I have to write a joke, right? So every day he wrote, he put an X on the calendar. And then that week he did it, and for a month he did it, and the next month, and he didn't. Then at that point he didn't want to break the streak.
Right.
Like he's like, I have to. That's just my thing. Every day I don't want to break the streak. Like so he wrote every day. So
Yeah, it's a good move. For sure. I totally understand that. And I do it my lunchtime is my getting the drawing, and after work I try to spend 2 hours in my studio. Even if I'm not painting, I want to be like organizing or prepping for a painting.
Even if you don't feel like it.
Yeah.
That's what I make myself do. I have to sit at the easel, like even if I'm not feeling it, I have to get the palette out. I have to mix the paint up, and then I'm like, well, I've already mixed up the paint. I better start doing something, and then it forces me to do it on the days that I don't really, I'm not feeling it.
It's like the gym. Once you're in there too, you're like, oh, I could be here for hours.
That's like 90% of it, right? It's just getting your ass to the easel.
Pretty much.
That's weird.
All right, so question time?
Question time.
It's time for Sergio's Question Corner.
So, first question is, do you have a list of top 5 living artists?
Oh, it's hard. It's hard. I also don't want to like leave people out. Okay, so John. Well, so it would be like the people who influenced me along my life.
Sure.
So when I was in high school, like going into college, the person who got me, like I was excited about going to that college was Chris Payne, CFP.
Oh, sure. Okay, yeah.
So I took his workshop class, and I was the secretary of the illustration department when I went to college, and so I had firsthand
Where'd you go to college?
Interaction with him. The Columbus College of Art and Design back in Ohio.
Okay.
And so Chris is a big Ohio guy. He's born and raised in the state. Like he still lives there. And he does these amazing, like, Time magazine covers and different kids' books now.
Sort of like Rockwell-ish influence.
Yeah, totally. But if Rockwell worked for the Mad Magazine, because they're kind of like
caricaturized.
Yeah. But that drawing skill is just amazing. I learned a ton of stuff from Chris.
Awesome.
And then Janju Palankar.
I know the name. I'm trying to remember.
Did like horror covers, like Lovecraft and different things. He did the Aragon book cover just recently, or fairly recently. The dragon cover with the like eyeball. I don't know.
I'll have to look it up.
Anyway, he was another huge influence.
This is why we do living, so we can learn people that. So Sergio can. I learn no matter who you say.
Definitely. So those guys were like huge for me. Like those were my college guys, like professors.
Awesome.
And John actually gave me my first illustration job. It was a annual report cover for this little company that like his wife is an editor.
Okay.
And it was a company who asked for John to do it, and he like didn't have time or didn't want to do it or like, whatever. And he he had a list of like 5 students, and I guess I was at the top of the list, and he called me first, and he was like, "Do you want this thing?" And I was like,
That's
"Yes,
awesome.
yes,
Yeah.
I do. Yes, I do."
That's awesome.
So he gave me my first illustration job. It's 2.
Yeah.
Phil Hale is like my all-time
Hale.
favorite painter.
Awesome. Yeah.
And it's odd though because it's something visceral with him, like because I would definitely call out Chris or John as being like technically better, like the craftsmanship of the thing. But there's just something about Phil that's like just gets you. Like,
yeah.
You know,
Visceral is a great word for it.
Yeah, it's a gut punch of like.
But for him,
so good.
It's definitely he falls under that category that you like that beauty with the
totally
with the horror.
Yeah. I remember he also. So there's one thing that I kind of want to beat him at. I mean, I don't like we're all competitive, like,
yeah.
kind of people. Like the one thing he released, I actually own one now. I had a friend, Walt.
I know Walt.
Yeah. So Walt gave me a Phil Hale painting.
Awesome.
Which
nice.
was amazing because I could never afford one.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to his house for barbecue, and he was like, "I'd like to give you this painting," and I was like, "Yes, please," because he knew it was my favorite, and he's friends with Phil, actually.
Yeah.
And so I have it hanging up, and it's fantastic. But the competitive edge of me is that I own one of these death's heads, is what he calls them.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and he did a bunch of them, maybe like 18 by 24-ish or 12 by 18-ish. They're around that size. And there's a classic photo of this leather couch, and he has like them all lined up on the couch and on top of the couch. And they're basically they're these skulls that are kind of sunken in, or pieces of skulls, various decay. And then like a couple of them have these little pink flowers hanging above the death. It's just, which literally is like the beauty and the horror thing. It's gorgeous. They're gorgeous pieces. And so I own one of these because Walt gave it to me. But he always used the term death's heads and just had these skull things. And I was like, if I gave anybody, like, I don't know, if I give another artist like the topic of death's heads, like I think you would do something like, you know, way more detailed or way like I don't know. So like in my head, I'm like, I'm gonna wait, and then I'm gonna do my own Death's Head series one day. And they're gonna be like better than Phil's.
Yeah, I like that. I like that attitude.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But it's healthy competition, right? It's
absolutely.
we're just all trying to do
for sure,
do better stuff.
Yeah,
but so
that's why Instagram is so great because it makes us compete with our peers a lot of times.
Yeah, so that's 3, and then Odd and Eardrum's another guy who's like beauty and fucked up like stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's just because the beauty lures you in, and then once I got your attention, we can talk about serious, like something more serious. Is the attraction for me?
Right.
Is like if a musician was no good, like you wouldn't listen to what they have to say, or if a filmmaker or anybody, right? Like we have to have that craftsmanship or that
to all the little B fans.
Right. Well, there's that. There's that. But I feel like you have to have that skill level for someone to like, you know, like you hear something like, oh, that's good, and then like once you have their attention, then you can have a serious discussion. So like
for sure.
What am I at 4?
You got 4. You got one more.
Who else is? I love JC Leyendecker.
Oh yeah,
just for the design. I work as a graphic designer as well, and so designing the page is like super important to me. Like even before I did work as a designer, like I was attracted to stuff that was like, you know, working on the page, like, you know, the rule of thirds and the stuff. I fucking geek out over that because it fulfills that left brain thing in me. It's like I'm organized, like it's very specifically organized into boxes and things and stuff. Like so I get a kick out of that.
I just went and saw. They had a special exhibit at the Hagen Museum in Stockton.
They have the largest collection of Rockwells.
Yeah.
Or, sorry, Leyendeckers.
Of Leyendeckers, yeah. But I guess there was this other artist from just after his time who had a collection of his paintings as well. So they had that collection just on a special exhibit on display for only a few months. So it was cool to see a couple ones.
He's not a living.
Oh, that's true. I didn't even,
so I failed.
We just geeked out
or
about
is
Yeah. He's living with Tupac in the Bahamas or whatever.
Yeah. Well, that's fine. Well, I have a side mini question before you ask your last question, which is there any artist that you hate?
Artist that I hate?
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be living. But if it is for having the ball.
I guess like overhyped stuff is
sure, yeah.
and anyone is like Yeah, like a Damien Hirst or a Jeff Koons or that. Where the thing, it's just it's a big puff, and there's not a lot of content behind it.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's the opposite of the thing I love. I love once you get the attention of a painting from across the room and you get up to it, it rewards you with more information and more things. Like yes.
For sure.
Those guys are the opposite, where they're like, "Look at me, I have nothing to say."
Yeah.
You're like, "Fuck you."
Look at me, I'm worth money.
Yeah, exactly.
It must be important. It's worth a lot of money. I've convinced everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
It's probably
so they are living too.
there's probably people who listen to your podcast. Like, I could turn it into a hate thing, like real fast. But like, I try not to be. I don't want to be negative, but like, I fucking hate Banksy. Like, I don't care. Like,
Hell yes.
I know people are way into that shit. Like, I think it sucks. Like, I'm not into it at all.
You want to talk some shit?
Hell yes. I've already gone on a full-on rant about Banksy. So, so you're in good company. I don't think our listeners are going to be offended at all.
No.
I feel like the opposite. I've had so many like them DM me like we go on these long rants like, "Thank you for saying that. Fuck these people." Like,
You know, in that space, like that graffiti sort of space, the guy that I love is there's a painter named Dan Wentz. You might have seen his stuff before.
I don't know.
Does these fine art paintings of like mosh pits and beautiful stuff. So he started off like,
you pronounce his last name Wentz. I always thought it was like Whites or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those.
Maybe you're right.
I'm probably wrong.
I'm the worst at names.
Maybe he's pronouncing it in the classic German, like Weitz or something.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. But I remember, like, and it's super inspiring thing he did for his, like, when he was doing, like, graffiti or street art kind of thing.
Like street art.
Yeah, was that he would go out and take, like, a panel off of a light post where you could unscrew it. He'd take that back to his house, and he'd paint, like, a beautiful, like, oil painting of a hummingbird, and then go back out and install it on the thing. And then sometimes, I saw this other thing where he was painting on a dumpster, and he was, like, sitting there with an airbrush, like, making this beautiful painting of a bird, like, for hours on this little... That's real, like...
He does some creepy stuff too, right?
He does some creepy stuff too.
Like the people like
coming out of the manhole covers and weird shit like that, where there's like a little grate, and he'll put a painting behind that grate so that if you were close enough and you looked inside the grate, there'd be this person looking back out at you. Yeah, those are great.
Yeah, his work is cool. I like it a lot.
So not talking shit about the arena, just talking shit about Banksy.
Yeah. I was thinking I might still do it, but I was thinking of because it was a drawing I was going to throw away recently. I was thinking of putting it through the paper shredder and videotaping it, and then putting on my story and putting like Banksy or something like that. Look out, Banksy, or something. Just like that. Did you see the paper shredder thing? Yeah. Just to be like, look, we can all do it. It's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, he's just playing that classic fine art game of one-upsmanship of like
marketing,
just trying to do something that hasn't been done before.
Yeah, exactly.
And attention and like look at this direction.
Yeah. Whereas I'm just more drawn to like singer-songwriter kind of people,
right?
Where they're telling a story.
Yeah, totally.
And
then one last question: what would you do with David Cho money, art-wise? Do you have any like crazy ideas that money's holding you back from doing?
I would do the same thing that Ashley Wood does. I don't know if you're familiar with Ashley Wood's.
I know his work, but I don't know what he does with his money.
So
but that's the girl's name.
Ashley Wood's an amazing painter who also had an illustration career and did a lot of book covers and things like that. Well, still does illustration stuff. But he pumps like cash back into, he buys paintings and he publishes books on artists that he likes.
Oh, right.
Stuff like that. So I would do all of the things I'm doing now. They would just be like way cooler, like scaled up. Exactly.
That's awesome.
So instead of having a little show in Oakland with some friends, I have a bigger show in LA.
Without your friends, because you got money now.
With amazing artists that I love and stuff like that. You know, I would do the exact same thing I'm doing now, just scaled up.
Yeah, I would change.
You would change?
I would be like, Sergio would be like, hey, Josh, like, who are you?
You would lose all your friends and invest in corporations, become a Republican. And,
lose my number.
Get a job. Awesome. Yeah, that's a great idea. I definitely would buy a ton of art.
Yeah.
That's like the one thing I'm like always, as an art fan as well, I'm always like, oh God, want to buy all these people's work, but they cost so much more money than
I would want to even more than just buy their work. Like I would want to like go give specific, like, you know, you have David Cho money, so you have like I would buy a building in SF, and then you could run all kinds of shit out of there. Like
for sure,
you could run a media company, have gallery shows in the bottom,
right?
Put out the books and things and stuff that we like. You know, you always wanted to see.
Yeah,
like, something. Like that.
Documentaries. I don't know who would have a good story to do a documentary about.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, have you ever seen the movie Struggle?
Struggle.
Yes. Okay. This is the Netflix documentary about the Polish artist.
Yep.
Yeah. It was great when he was talking about the creepy stuff of like, I learned anatomy from my father.
Yeah.
And when I say that, I mean I learned anatomy by dissecting his body.
My dad. Yeah.
Like, oh shit.
Yeah,
I'm totally into that dude, except for the crazy Nazi leaning
right.
stuff.
Yeah.
And when you get to that point, you're like, oh, I'm out. I'm out.
I mean, it's one of those. In a way, it's one of those. I love that that's in the movie because it shows you how much you can go in one direction with the wrong. Like you can think you're going the right direction, but you're going so wrong. You know, it's going so wrong, and then you have the ability to kind of change and become something different.
Well, that's that absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? Because super early on, before the crazy Jewish stuff, Hitler's a fascinating character, right? He's like, we're struggling, we need to come together for the people. You're like, yeah. And then he's pointing to like, these people did, whoa, what?
Exactly.
What? Like, it seems like almost every movement early on, you're like, all right, go on, you guys, like, good job. Like, and then it's so fast, falls apart, right?
For sure.
It's crazy.
Jeez.
So I was with that struggle guy until the crazy. But do you feel like he was also a weird victim of circumstance? Like if you're, and that's what we're talking about, like, and knowing the context of when something was created. Like he might not have known that they were fucking crazy, like because he was being commissioned by like these people.
Right.
Like, I also saw another thing that.
But he also wrote a book, I think, that was also kind of. But I mean,
do you see part of it though? Like he kind of came back and tried to. He made these like funny drawings of Hitler or something and sent it to them.
Yeah.
Like they were asking him to do a commission,
right?
And he did these fucked up drawings of Hitler and sent it back to them.
Like a pig nose or something like that.
Yeah.
So maybe he didn't know till like farther in that things were fucked up. Like
I think it was just the ideology back then was a lot more and. Like around that time too, like World War II, like that time was just, a dark place.
It seemed like people didn't understand like the dark side of nationalism like they do now.
Totally.
Yeah, because of that time specifically.
Yeah, exactly.
But someone asked us or shout out to Plague. He said, he said for the fan questions or whatever.
It was more making fun of us, but it's still a good question.
Because I like that movie so much.
Yeah.
I thought it was amazing.
Yeah.
Just to see a person who's lived a life so intensely and so
Wait, to get my points back on the 5-question thing?
Sure.
Because we laughed off the one. And then the struggle thing brought it up to me. So like this is my I don't know. I keep saying that this is my left brain thing of like trying to like win all the points back. Robert Williams is in that documentary.
Robert
Williams.
Oh, okay.
And he's like a huge inspiration. I love that dude.
Okay.
I feel like all of us are only doing what we're doing because of Robert Williams. Like, right? Like, during his time, like it was like a lot of abstract art and stuff like that.
Sure.
Representation, realism was not getting any kind of play whatsoever. He created Juxtapose. He started doing shows that had representational art and a lot of concept, like like narrative and stuff. He was bringing that back. But he happens to be in that documentary struggle, talking about how he hung out with that dude when he was in LA.
Right.
At the time. And so there's my 5. Robert Williams.
And he's like in his 70s or something now?
Yeah. I've met him 2 times. He came and did a show in Santa Rosa that was amazing. It was a retrospective of his work, and he had some new sculptures that he was been working on there. And I met him at Alternative Press Expo a few years ago.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I got a photo with him both times. I was super excited.
Nice.
Where in Santa Rosa was he showing?
Santa Rosa? I thought you said San Francisco.
No, Santa Rosa. He was in Santa Rosa at the I don't know know what I'm terrible at. I'm super geographically challenged. Like I don't know where. That's why I love Google Maps because like it does all that shit for me. Like like right now I don't don't know where we are.
But was it like an art gallery venue or the museum?
It was a museum.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's probably the Santa Rosa, the new art museum they have there now.
I know. Tony Brown's listening, going, "It's the fucking museum," because he went to the same show that I went to.
Oh, okay.
So just let's play it dumb, even dumber.
I don't know what it's called. I don't know what it's called.
Who are we?
But it was cool. He drove up.
You're Josh Lawyer. I don't know who I am.
But Robert drove up from L.A. So he had like his fancy car. He's into that hot rod culture. So he drove up with his fancy car and then like had this show and was like super approachable. Like I got to talk to him for a little while and
that's cool.
It was fun.
Nice.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, if people want to find you, you're on the Instagrams.
Stephen Russell Black.
Yeah. And then you have a website?
StephenRussellBlack.com.
Nice.
It's just my full name. I branded everything. Yeah,
you got a sneaker coming out called the Stephen Russell Black.
That's right.
The SRB Dunks.
SRB.
I remember there was a shoe. It's Spike Lee did the Mars Blackman commercials with the thing. Do you remember that back in the day? That was super early when I was a little kid.
I think so.
He was in the commercial?
Yeah. He's in the commercial with Jordan.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, I do remember that.
And he's like saying facts about Jordan.
Yes, and his character name was Mars Blackman, I think.
Oh, really?
Okay.
So if I had a shoe come out, I'd have to do
Mars Blackman.
That's right, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
I really appreciate it. It was super fun. If you're still listening, rate and review.
Oh, yeah.
Please.
Send us a voicemail if you want.
We always forget to do that. But yeah, thanks for doing this. If you're still listening, fuck off.